Into chapter 4, learning to look at symbols. And to get us started, I have something I want to read from the page, from the book, to get us geared and centered into what this chapter is all about, which is dissecting symbols and understanding that symbols are more than just some abstract picture. How's my connection?
It's all right.
All right. I'm about to read from page 53. Symbols are highly abstract, condensed, and coded messages that are developed by the activity of the brain computer and the human organism. These messages are developed and evolved from energy, data received in the brain, and from the external environment. Various lines of energy data from the total environmental coverage on the brain computer via the nervous system, which can then, under the proper circumstances, lead to the development of a symbol. Thus, symbols reflect certain aspects of the external environment and the total body's internal environmental response to the external environment. Once the victims of oppression accurately and completely decode the system and its objective of oppression, and once they fully analyze symbols and patterns of logic, thought, speech, action, emotional response, and perception, consciously or unconsciously determined, that constitute the system, the oppressed will be able to recognize their own behavior effectively. This reorganization will result in self-group and support, and thereby end their oppression.
Thanks for reading that, Trace. Very important to understand the power that symbols hold, whether we subconsciously or consciously are realizing that we're processing these symbols and their messages. Does anyone have any questions about chapter 4? Any comments before we really get into it?
I have a question just to get the ball rolling. And this is not requiring you to have read the book. And I would like those who are capable of speaking to answer the question. What is a symbol to you? And I'll start by answering my own definition. To me, a symbol is a marker that exists solely to guide an individual or a group, and that marker could be abstract or literal, and its sole purpose is to influence the person who looks at it or the group that looks at it to perform certain behavior patterns in the form of thought, speech, or emotional response. So that's my definition and understanding of symbols. Markers that exist to guide, influence, and control the viewer, observer, or the person who acknowledges it.
Yeah, I would just use your definition for mine as well.
Yeah, I think for me, it's a symbol is a representation of a specific concept or a thought. I think it can be used in a way that is to influence people, right? But the concept itself, though, is just like creating an abstract representation, which, like, as is explained in chapter 4, it can carry a lot of power, right? Because it sort of it rests on sort of abstraction, right? And symbols a lot of times are part of the everyday that we kind of take for granted, and is connected to thoughts that are considered common wisdom. And yeah, so I mean, I think it's important to speak to that.
Awesome. Ben, you have something you want to share? You're muted.
Excellent definitions. That was very profound what Joe just shared. And, after reading this, I'm finding that you can just about find symbols in everything. Everything symbolizes everything almost. It depends, what context you're seeing it as. So yeah, good stuff. Good stuff. Mute.
Moni, the question was, what are symbols to you? What do symbols mean to you? No, actually, yeah, what's your definition of a symbol, actually?
Definition of a symbol is something representing something of significance, to assign it an affiliation, representation, giving power to a word, perhaps, or maybe a direction or a sign, philosophically or otherwise. Okay, that's a little bit of it, I think, for me. Symbols are religious, spiritual, directional, practical. There's all kinds of symbols. So I guess trying to get a broad enough definition to meet all those different areas. But I'm sorry I haven't read it. So I told you I'd just like peek in and out of your meeting today because you guys have a fascinating conversation going on. But I'm multitasking, getting my dad his brunch. So.
Oh, we totally understand.
Yeah, thanks. Okay, I'm gonna mute myself. Thanks.
All right. Okay, I want to
Just to piggyback on, I think also what a lot of us are talking about, and what Cressling is trying to talk about is visual rhetoric, right? So the visual element being that it's something that you see, it's a symbol that you see instead of, say, maybe a symbol that you would hear. And then the rhetoric element, right? The persuasive messaging, right? And that's important. And so, like, for me, chapter 4 was kind of the more interesting chapter, in like creating that sort of foundational concept before she decided to go into like Christian iconography, because to me visual rhetoric is really, really fascinating, right? Like I don't know that day to day we always pay attention to just how much visual rhetoric has a direct influence on our life, right? But I mean, it really does. And it's learning like what that is, how to decode it, and how to sort of be an active participant in our thinking. I think that's, to me, that's the really powerful like takeaway.
To emphasize just the importance of symbols, I want to read this part from page 55. These complex symbols are, in effect, full synthesis, paragraphs, or entire books of data stated in a highly abstract line, image, or line configuration. Once a symbol is formed, it is capable of acting upon the brain computer, which receives it as energy or data message. This message affects the end product of behavior as carried forth in any area of human activity. The symbol, in turn, acts upon the external environment. These single picture synthesis or single picture paragraphs commence in the brain computer and act as powerful, undetected persuaders, and thus as powerful determinants of behavior patterns. So I just want to emphasize that.
And I wanted to just give some more coding for that. It's also on page 55. Just so we're all aware of what can manifest as symbols. Musical notes on paper, as well as written and spoken words, are symbols. There are other kinds of symbols that are not immediately translated or fully understood because of their highly abstract forms and complexity. The impact of these symbols reach subconscious and unconscious levels of brain activity. These complex symbols are in full. Oh, that's gonna be it. I'm stop right there. Just want to finish that. But I'm gonna hammer this in one more time. The impact of these symbols reach subconscious and unconscious levels of brain activity. So we're being influenced by symbols constantly, whether we are aware of it or not. And that means whenever you watch a TV show, whenever you listen to a song, whenever you read a book, you are gathering information consciously and subconsciously.
Yeah, don't forget. I think when we go to the supermarket and we see all these little ads and all their little corporations, their logos and stuff, those are also symbols. And I was in Trader Joe's and I was looking at this symbol, this like it was alcohol, but the box art was really sus. It was like a bunch of like white people and only one surrounded by like one black person or something. And I was like, I'll just take a picture of this. I'll find it and send it in the chat.
Send it to the chat, please.
It was really so symbols everywhere, especially when we go to the mall shopping about.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's why just brought up a good point. Has anyone seen any symbols that stood out to them that they want to talk about or like explain to the group so we could get better at decoding symbols and share our own experiences with symbols? All right. Well, I'll just start by doing something really abstract. So what do we see on the back of my iPhone case? You see Apple, right? So we see an apple, and underneath, in the context of the racism, white supremacy culture, you cannot see an apple without associating it, to me, with Adam and Eve who bit from the apple. The apple was missing a piece, clearly. And this is just me looking at my iPhone right now because it's the closest thing I had to me. Because we're going to be talking about chapter 5, which is mostly about Christianity, the book claims that Adam and Eve were the first albino people born, and the Garden of Eden is actually Africa, and they were forced out of Africa. To me, there's no coincidence that the most biggest cell phone company has a fucking apple bitten from it, and there's no coincidence that the number one religion in the world is Christianity. No coincidences there. That's just my elementary breakdown of a symbol that I literally just took off my my case. But yeah, symbols are everywhere and they can be decoded. And whatever you say about the symbol, if your mind thought of it, then it's probably going to be somewhat accurate, because when the person was creating it, their subconscious was working just as much as your subconscious is working.
Can I share something about a symbol right quick?
Of course, please.
In most Christian architecture, you see shapes of the serpent everywhere. If you look, even the shapes of the windows, and there's even a temple, an auditorium hall in Rome, in Vatican City, that's purely designed based on the serpent, and the serpent symbolizing that which is, not, they're making the comparison between knowledge and evil, that knowledge is evil, and to be a follower and not to be a thinker. And I'm sure she's gonna, I read that chapter, but I'm sure she'll elaborate more on the serpent, the serpent symbol. Okay, that's it.
Oh, thanks for sharing. I definitely agree. The whole Roman Institute has a lot of unfortunate activities going on. Child pedophilia, necrophilia, cannibalism, all that stuff is going on in the Roman Church.
I remember they persecuted him.
Oh, sorry, Mama.
No, just to say the Roman. I'll just say the Roman. Saying that the Roman Empire persecuted Jesus for supporting the poor, the marginalized, those who didn't fit the empire's mold. So the symbols have certainly been manipulated to manipulate people, for sure.
Yeah, and there was a like hundreds of Black people crucified. It wasn't just Jesus that we learned about.
Barnabas on his right. Yeah, that's true. Yep.
They had like a whole line of like 60 crosses with like just Black people hanging on them. So yes, but yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
One thing I wanted to add from a historical context, right? Oh, and pardon me, I'm sorry. I'll try not to speak over folks with the delay. So from the historical context, there is this, there's this thought of like architecture with churches, especially in Europe. And it was this thought of the architecture of the church being a poor man's Bible, right? So at a time when, at least in the context of Europe, there was very low literacy, right, for what we would consider everyday folks, at a time when the church held a lot of direct power and influence on folks, and was basically weaponizing language, and burning folks at the stake for even translating religious text into like the common tongue, and they tried to keep it in Latin, etc. There was a way that architecture was used with symbology so that folks could see specific scenes from different biblical texts or what have you. And that form of architecture has quite literally been referred to as the poor man's Bible. To me, that is absolutely a display of like symbolism and iconography that is readily understood, and that's like employed in a not a subversive way, but that's employed in a way to like maintain control. And I think that's important to throw out there.
Thanks so much for sharing. I definitely definitely agree. I'm gonna keep reading stuff from the text so we all know how important these symbols are. So we're gonna have to utilize our own symbols. So this is from page.
Great. I had something that I wanted to add about symbols before you continue.
Please share. Yeah.
Okay, so I was going to say on page 54, what I wrote down when I was reading, something that stood out to me that was very interesting was she says, I think it's like halfway through the page, she said, these messages are developed and evolved from energy sensory data received in the brain from external environment. The symbols reflect certain aspects of the external environment and the total body's internal environment. Responses to the external environment, like music, notes, paper, written words, spoken words, so a lot of these things that you guys like already were speaking about. But what was interesting to me is how she connects it with the external and the internal, meaning that symbols derive from something that is already happening in the world. And then the way we're perceiving them and using them and developing them is basically the problem or the solution, depending on, who's in charge.
Yep. What you just said just inspired my thought. Thank you for sharing first of all, Celia. So I want to try this activity with you guys. I'll type a word into the chat, and basically, can you guys just type the first word that comes into your mind? So when you guys are hearing conversations and people are talking about impoverished third world countries, what is the first country that comes to mind? Spider muted.
Africa.
Thank you, Celia.
I was gonna say India and the continent of Africa as well.
Okay. Do you guys understand that the starving African and the starving Indian child have been basically symbolized now?
No, it's true. I agree as well.
Yeah, I want to mention, bring to the collective conscious, Starvin Marvin from South Park. That character, I'm sure, allowed the normalization of like the stereotype and also the normalization of Africans, the continuing suffering of Africans, because Starvin Marvin is literally a African character in South Park who is from a starving village, and he seeks out to feed his people. And it's really like racist, as South Park usually is. But yeah, shut up, Snow. All
right. Thanks for sharing, Celia and Swa. I want more people to answer this question. When you think of third world countries, what comes to mind?
I think of exploitation by corporate multinationals that have destroyed their country, and that they're actually rich in minerals, and that the poor are only poor because the rich are stealing from them.
So what Moni said is an amazing point. Our current society, Africa, and most third world countries have been symbolized to mean poor, instead of being symbolized to mean exploited, pillaged, and colonized. So symbols are everywhere. Like the whole African with a fly on his eyeball, that's a symbol now. Like when you see like a Black homeless person, that's a symbol now. These things are living, walking, breathing symbols, reminders that Black people are supposed to be here while everyone else is supposed to be here. So symbols are everywhere and they've evolved. They're always going to be evolving. I want to do the activity with you guys so we could see how our mind just, when you see a word, your mind starts thinking about stuff already. So we have to tame all these things eventually. And to hammer in what I had just put you guys through, this is from page 55. These complex symbols are usually related to the deepest cultural themes of a people and have significant messages to convey about the people's culture and reason for being. Furthermore, these reasons are passed on uncensored and the unconscious via the total environmental experience from the beginning of people time, generation to generation. So FYI guys, when I say guys, I mean in a non-gender specific way. Black people have been symbolized to be, just our symbolization is dehumanization. And like, I have a theory, but I can't prove it yet. But I have a theory that Black people are walking living memes at the moment. You know, like we've been memeified, and we're not taken seriously. And that is something I find really, really disheartening and scary. You know,
It's a memification of Black souls. Is that what happens after the dehumanization? Dehumanization, is that like the next step?
Yeah, I think it's part of it. I mean, there are Black folks that have dedicated like their sort of research life to doing that now, right? Or also just public thinkers, right? So like the term digital blackface, right? That is kind of a recent conversation that's surfacing, right? So because when we started talking about this, and I guess, you know, Trey like brought that insight, it absolutely seems like that would be like one manifestation of it, you know. I think to me, where my mind goes is, and it's probably just because I've just started like reading like Saidiya Hartman, but for me, it goes back to, which is like a legal term, but fungibility, right? That is, that's how she's able to kind of discuss things. And I mean, I had to look it up. That's like not my background, but it's the thought of something being both a commodity and it being expendable. And she mentions that from the very onset of like the transatlantic slave trade and the diaspora, that's here in the West, that label, that status has always been attached to Black people. And there's a direct through line with everything, even up to today, of Black people being assigned the status of being a commodity and being something that's expendable. And so at that point, of course, you can turn someone into a meme. Of course, you can, you know, then decide that I'm going to do something with that iconography of, you know, someone not being human, right? It lays the groundwork for that being a possibility, in a way that it's not a possibility for non-Black folks, right? Or it's less of a possibility because of the way that the racial caste system is set up.
I think though with Trey, what Trey was saying though, Swal kind of went on the other end of the spectrum. Like Swal's end of the spectrum was more so it wasn't complex, because his what he read was about complex symbols. They reach a subconscious and unconscious level. She's saying that this one symbol is just as powerful as a paragraph or an entire book or a data set. And it can just be a single image or a line configuration, that they're so powerful that they go unprotected, they go undetected. And she called them specifically powerful undetected persuaders, and thus powerful deterrents of behavioral patterns, because they are so undetectable. And so what Swai was saying, like a meme is kind of like, you can understand a meme, you can get a meme. A meme is like the butt of the joke. A meme is like, and but, you know, kind of thing. But these kind of symbols, the ones that like the cross and how she broke that down, or the Christmas tree and how she broke that down, those are the ones that we need to be afraid of and more mindful of. And when right when she said complex symbols, the first thing that I thought about, hieroglyphs. Are people hieroglyphs? A single symbol. Let me turn my video on. If you know what this unk means, then you know the power of a single symbol, and what a single symbol, and how many definitions this has, and what this stands for, how complex this single symbol is. And this is the opposite of the cross. This is the opposite of that. The exact everything that you think the cross is, this is the exact opposite of it. Okay, I'm done. Sorry.
I like during this conversation, I've developed like new realizations. Until I just discovered when all these rappers started dying, I was like, damn, Black Death is super like commodifiable. But then as I contextualize like reality to white supremacy, I realized, actually, the Europeans have in their nature, it's in their nature to make death commodifiable. So it's in their nature to commodify death, because when they have to survive up in those ice mountains, it was beneficial to them when people died. So they have more food, and they got to eat those dead bodies, those dead people's body parts. And black people, our deaths has always been commodifiable to white people. When we died during slavery, they just sold our bodies to the labs and to the hospitals and donated our skulls to the schools and whatnot. So black death has always been commodified in the system of white supremacy. And I fairly recently thought it was like a new occurrence with these rappers dying, but no, it's been here since white supremacy. But when I had that thought, I was not contextualizing my reality to white supremacy. I was just living whatever. So that's important.
Just support. Just as what I just said, just keep in mind that you can still find antique invitations to lynchings that had pictures of the previous lynching on them, which is the commodification of death. Keep in mind that people will get invitations to lynchings in the mail, which is the commodification of death. Keep in mind that the government allowed for prisoners to be executed publicly, and people were encouraged to go and support. All of these instances are the commodification of death. The fact that even today you can schedule yourself and go see an execution, that is the commodification of death. And even if it's not money, you just being able to be there to get energy from it is that is the commodification part. It doesn't have to be economics. So this is happening today. Even people recording a video of a black person and selling that to the news, that's the commodification of death as well. So it's happening today, and it's just really, really uncomfortable that our reality is so. I mean, we can live in a great society. It's being dominated right now by people who classify themselves as white, and they're doing a really good job at keeping that whole planet in a terrorizing the whole planet. Also terraforming it as well.
Which is why we have to transform it with love, brother, love. Remember, back to love. Violence is the tool of the white man. Violence is the tool of the white man.
We had this conversation last week. I believe. We decided that what we is power, critical mass of like-minded to reform the Black collective, and the collective needs to be aware of white supremacy, and the collective needs to be aware that it should be fighting white supremacy. That should be the collective goal. Love can happen. We can love the collective, love each other within the collective.
Yeah, I think love is important as well, but also I defend the people that I love, right? So sometimes love motivates me to beat somebody's ass. That's important too, because sometimes that's what's called for, right? So yeah, absolutely, right? I want to operate from a focal point of love, but if it needs to be a sword, it needs to be a sword. And for me, that's just calling a thing a thing.
Thanks, Joe, for bringing that in. Let's see, this right here. I'm just gonna keep regurgitating this information so we all are understanding what a symbol is and how it manifests in many ways. This is on page 57, and she's quoting a writer, and it goes as, a symbol is a term, a name, or even a picture that may be familiar in daily life, yet that possesses specific connotations in addition to its conventional and obvious meaning. It implies something vague, unknown, or hidden from us. He continues, a word or an image is symbolic when it implies something more than its obvious and immediate meaning. It has a wider unconscious aspect that is never precisely defined or fully explained. He further informs us that as the mind explores the symbol, it is led to the ideas that lie beyond the grasp of reason. And this is why I think when you have people like the Son of Sam who went on a killing spree after he read what book was it? I don't want to say the
Helter Skelter. Helter Skelter?
Was that the book he read?
Was it? I don't know. That was Charles Manson's book, or about Charles Manson. Maybe that's not it.
I know Helter Skelter has inspired a lot of killings for sure. His book was more
yeah, I think Timothy McVeigh may have been inspired by the Turner Diaries. I could be wrong, but he's the person who blew up the federal building and killed a ton of people, including destroying a daycare that was right across the street.
he said
yeah, I mentioned that just to show that like these people like are just totally consumed by symbols that are designed for them to perpetuate some sort of violence, which is what white supremacy loves: violence and destruction.
Definitely. And just for you guys for those who are unaware, the Turner Diaries is a white supremacist fiction book, and it's a diary by a racist white supremacist, and every day he's writing down his personal experiences, and as this happens, a race war is like on their horizon. And also it's a very popular book amongst those who are neo-Nazis and who are white nationalists, aka people who classify themselves as white, who understand their agenda and who play by their own rules and are very, very aware that they need to maintain, refine, and uplift racism, white supremacy by any means, at any cost. It's a really, really short chapter. Is there anything, does anyone need clarifications, or like anyone want to share anything about the chapter?
I wanted to ask Ben a question. Ben, I wanted to know what was your thoughts on how symbolism is evolved externally and internally?
I'll answer.
That's for me.
Well, externally, I see video games playing like a huge role in 2020. Well, like in our modern society, video games are full of symbols that teach these millions of young generation of white children how to kill, and that killing is fun. And that's like a new way these symbols are manifested to refine and maintain white supremacy.
That's
Sorry
a
for
good one.
you.
But yeah, Ben, it was for you, but anybody can answer.
I guess the first thing that came to mind for me was it just randomly popped up was the symbolism of external beauty, not just the hair, but all of the skin toning, the dress, all of our external beauty, and what constitutes beauty, and the lie that's been perpetuated, and we've been conditioned with this lie of what is actually beautiful, and how it internally affects a person's self-esteem, our self-worth, and self-loathing, and how we have an opportunity to really flip the script. That's why I love natural hair on a woman. And I hate excuse my French, those fucked up, funky ass weaves. Sorry if anybody's wearing a weave. Sorry about that.
That's messed up. That's messed up. No weave, but I got braids.
Victims guarantee qualifications, which is which states that any victim of racism, white supremacy can say anything about racism, white supremacy. BTQ. Not because it's going to be accurate, just to defuse the bickering amongst the collective and to keep the goal on ending white supremacy. Neely Fuller Jr.
I still like you. I'm muting your mic. You want to say something?
Yeah, I was gonna say something. What was I actually going to say? I was going to say, so this year I've decided to obviously not wear wigs at all. I love my hair.
Why you decided?
Oh, normally, okay. So sorry, I'm currently pregnant. I'm literally in my last stages and I'm just so tired. But never mind.
Congrats.
I love natural hair. I'm natural all the way natural. My hair is just tied back. But I decided 2020 I'm not going to wear no wigs, like try not to wear no wigs, because at the end of the day it is really nice to like embrace your natural hair and avoid putting chemicals. And I realized that with our people, a lot of people do struggle with how to maintain our hair. They don't have, how do I explain it? They're not educated. They don't know what to do. And that's why they always turn to like maybe wigs or perms in order to maintain their hair. Sometimes some people want to do it because obviously they want to be on the whiter spectrums of things. And for me, I just said, you know what, I'm going to try and set an example where this whole 2020, I'm not going to wear wigs at all, like literally not at all. Normally, on like last year, I will wear wigs, on my birthday or every other day, maybe a wedding. But I've decided, you know what? No, I'm not going to do that anymore. At the end of the day, if anything, I'm going to teach other people that they can grow their long natural hair and wear it just like how you wear a wig. So when you said you like natural hair, I was just clapping my hands like, yeah, because I realized a lot of young boys nowadays, some of them will either go for, especially our boys, some of them will go for like white girls, Latino girls. Okay, cool, that's your preference. But I've realized the ones that go for those kind of girls, they've got some sort of a negative, I don't know, like a negative thought about black women and their hair is nappy and it's a lot. If I go into it, it's just gonna be a lot. So it's just like, yeah. So when you said you like the natural hair, I like to hear that coming from men, because a lot of guys don't really embrace black girls with their natural hair. Stop it. And yeah.
And I just want to contextualize the wig. I believe the wig to be a symbol, Eurocentric ideas of beauty, aka white supremacy.
Yeah.
Definitely a symbol. You guys remember in the Black Panther when they were so mad because they had to have those wigs on and she couldn't wait to snatch it off, and she called it something. I don't remember what she called it, but it was hilarious.
Yeah, I remember. This is I agree with Ben. I feel the same way, and I felt I was a kid. I just something feels very unnatural about putting something to block your scalp from the sun. So I was in LA, and from May to July, I was in LA. I was hanging out with my cousin, and she would wear these. She would she would make her hair really slick back, and then she would put on a wig. And then me and her were outside, and I was like, when you wear that wig, it's really hard for the sun to like touch your head. And I feel like the sun rays are supposed to like touch our head, and I feel like the whole wig stops Black people from being more connected to nature, which is the sun. And I do feel like it's like a mask for your head, and I do think a lot of Black women and also men who wear wigs carry a lot of trauma and a lot of pain, and they get comfort from wearing straight hair. They get comfort for being associated with like European beauty standards.
Yeah,
I do think it's unhealthy, and I do think it damages the scalp and also limits the thinking processes. That could be my own theory, but I do think it's strategic, and I do think it's unhealthy, and I do think something is very wrong by covering up your whole head with fake dead hair. It's not supposed to happen. Not on the scale that's happening right now. I mean, for like a movie and for a TV show, of course you want to be a different character, blah 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 blah. But in a natural state, when you
No.
in your life, you should not have a helmet on your head blocking it from the sun.
Yeah, and it all
Yeah,
stems
and I
from
mean,
this need to look European, be European, to fit in, to look like them, talk like them, dress like them, type of idea, of course. So
Can
if
I
it's
say
that,
something?
then anything that, yeah, go ahead.
No, it's okay. Sorry. Sorry. You were still talking. Sorry.
No, go
oh,
ahead.
no, no worries. And I'm really trying not to take up that much space here because this is mostly a conversation that like Black women and Black femmes have ownership over. So like I don't, I I want to be really explicit about that, and listen more than I talk. So please go ahead.
I was gonna say, some of this kind of stems back from our parents as well. I'm gonna be honest from my experience and some of my cousins' experience, especially if you have like an African mom, and it stems back because as I don't even know how to even explain it, but I'm gonna try and express it the best way I can. I feel like sometimes, obviously, because of our parents don't really have a better understand, especially the old generation, some of them, they don't really have, like with my mom, she never embraced me to like obviously wear my natural hair. It's a thing where, okay, I still like, you need to perm your hair now. Oh, I still this, I still that. When I was younger, she used to perm it a lot. And obviously it's because I don't know why she did it. Maybe she thought it was more nicer in her mind. However, when I became independent, I just stopped all of that. And it was quite, to be honest, I'm not going to lie to you, it was quite easy for me because I think it's because I loved my hair. And I thought that, okay, you know what? Why is it that we're trying to be white, I guess? Like, why are we trying to obviously adapt to, we're not them, if you understand, we're totally different. We have culture. It's so hard to explain it, but what I'm trying to say is that a lot of the reason why a lot of these girls love to wear their wigs and have straight hair and make sure it's all slick and make sure it's all, I don't know, they always think that our hair is nasty or nappy or tough and all of that. It's because sometimes it does stem back from their parents. Their parents don't teach them all of this stuff. I have two boys and I still have to say to them, you know what, you guys are kings. Your hair's nice the way it is. Like, you guys are very handsome. And once you start to teach your kids things like that, their self-confidence will they will develop their self-confidence, if you understand. Like, no one can like shut down their self-esteem. And that's what I'm trying to do at this stage with my boys, and they're 4 and 9. And it was just I think it was just 2 weeks ago, Trey was he even educated me about me saying dreadlocks. My mum has dreadlocks, and I had no idea that the word dread was to symbolize how awful people, well, our people who have dreadlocks, it just looks disgusting. Basically, I had no idea, and ever since then, I start to say locks because now I know the symbol behind them. And I always be like, Mama, your dreadlocks are they're long, or oh yeah, she has dreadlocks. I had no idea that the word dread came from the white supremacies to symbolize how disgusting our hair is. And I actually felt bad for that. I'm not gonna lie. Like, thanks, Trey, for teaching me that. But yeah, man, that's about it.
Yeah,
That's
I
about
wanted
it.
to add, I agree with everything you said, Issa. I wanted to also add that, like, when parents are doing their kids' hair and are like complaining or calling it difficult or like causing pain, like it also like causes kids when they grow up to not want to like do their own hair and like feel connected to their hair because they always see it as a difficult process because that's what they've like learned and stuff. And I think also just like the whole idea of really like being so invested in your looks is to take away time that you could be like learning and reading and stuff. Because personally for me, like since I've locked my hair, I don't spend any time on like beauty, and that's not like a part of my life anymore. And I've saved so many hours in my life, and like time is such a precious thing. It's like just as precious as money. And I think it's like really important to like think about how much we spend our time on trying to look presentable and what that even means, and if it really is like furthering our growth as people in our community.
Yeah. And I want to add that, like, we as Black folks are human. We have the right to vanity, right? So I want to offer that as well, right? You know, because what I think what I've learned, right, in sort of like interacting like with kind of my sisters and like the women in my family, it's if the wig is a choice that stems purely from vanity, but not from self-hate, then then that's a very different case than if you won't show up outside of like your own four walls, not looking presentable, right? Those are two very different realities. And I really think there's something beautiful how a lot of Black women have reclaimed, right, beauty standards, or even wear weaves as a protective style, right? I think that's something that's worth tossing into the discussion as well. So for me, right, I've noticed that, and even like as, you know, someone who's like tender-headed, right? Like, you know, like some growing up, like anybody who's tender-headed, that's, we got a little trauma from that sometimes, unfortunately. But to me, it's bigger to speak to the intention of what is fueling the action than just the action itself. Because there are ways that we've renegotiated there are ways that we've renegotiated and reclaimed things that initially we were subjected to and have created new meaning out of that. And it's not always directly connected to hate. And I think that's important as well. There's agency. There's agency in these decisions as well.
I believe that most, if not all things is some form of reaction to racism, white supremacy, subconsciously or consciously. Not just, yeah.
Yeah, and I also wanted to say the thing about wigs, I just want to say that Africans in Kemet, ancient Egypt, were definitely straightening their hair with ancient tools, because, you know, Black people created the hot comb, and they found like fossilized hot combs in Kemet, which is known as Egypt. And I've never a wig being found there, but I do know that after Egyptians had straightened their hair with hot combs. I do think the creation of the wigs was to help people who couldn't grow their hair naturally, and also to make people fall in line. And you could tell who's falling in line by what they're wearing on top of their heads. Like that's just my the vanity thing is very true, but to me it's because our system is so racist, it's gonna be hard to find someone who just wants to put on a wig to look pretty. That's just my personal, because I know the fact that I know the extreme effects of mass media culture. Like mass media culture has people spending money to be happy, and they're not even happy because they're not themselves. They're a very, really poor reflection and copy of the person in their magazine in their room. You know, that's my interpretation of those things. Moni, did you want to share what you put into the chat? And I don't think Asila can chat because she's on her phone.
Yeah.
You can ask your question and you can share what you put if you want to.
Oh.
Yeah.
Sure. No, I just typed in response to Ben setting off this conversation that full disclosure and admission, what is it? When you declare your, what is it? Anyway, I explain myself. A wig or a weave I wore for a time when I was playing the part of Michelle Obama. And so then I'd also just wear it ongoing because you have your weave in for a few weeks or a month or two, and probably too long, because then I ended up having, like, I like what you said, Trey, about having the sun needing to touch your scalp. Well, I have a permanent spot here on the top of my head that the hair hasn't grown back in, because the crown piece that they sew your hair, your natural hair, into the weave kind of pulled the hair out, I think. My dad's phone's ringing. The other thing I asked is whether in the UK they use that term tender-headed. I was curious.
Isola, do they use the term tender-headed in the UK? They may be with their kids at the moment. I'll ask them when they return. And just to add to what Moni just said, I remember when I first walked into Afro House. For context, Afro House is the place that me, Swa, and Joel lived, and when we were students at Berkeley. And I saw a picture on the picture frame, and I picked up the picture, and I thought I was holding a picture of Michelle Obama inside Afro House, and I got so happy because the place I was living was like nice enough for Michelle Obama to come. And then when I first met Moni, I literally thought she was Michelle Obama. I'm not even kidding, but she wasn't. She's Morning Law. But yeah, she actually, looked just like Michelle Obama in that picture. But yeah.
Yeah, I think it's so much about just how the system of white supremacy works, right? It makes it uses knowledge in a way that is kind of carceral, right? It's a way to either create freedom for some folks or to cage other folks in. And definitely in terms of the power and politics connected to beauty and what is considered beautiful and what's considered ugly, all of that comes into play. And so I think for Black folks, it's like, coming to learn how to take care of our hair, right? To just appreciate like the variety of curl patterns we have and figuring out which one that you do, right? That's knowledge that we actively have to seek out, because that's a function of living in a white supremacist system. That's not something that white folks have to do, right? Because that, once again, is like a function of how that system works. So it's very interesting. And I think it's a conversation that, at least among men and male identified folks, is still far behind what it is for Black women and femmes, because I still rarely see anyone interrogate why Black men who consider themselves like respectable or upstanding still rely on maybe having like a 1/4 inch of hair on their head, and will not interrogate that and will fight you if you ask why they have like reactions like, oh, I think my hair is getting too long, and the hair is like this, that high on their scalp. So, once again, it's like whoever the conversation started with, it's still not nearly as vibrant and as loud a conversation as it needs to be, because hair politics absolutely is something that directly impacts all Black folks. And, as a Black man, it's not something that I escape either.
No one ever escapes until it's all over the system.
Yeah, just to chime in a bit on what Joel says, like I have so many people tell me because of my locks I can't be a director, because of my locks I can't be successful in my industry that I'm working towards. And to me, I'm I'm already black, so if it wasn't for my locks, it was gonna be for my skin. So I'm gonna keep my locks and I'm gonna keep my skin, and I'm gonna make great films that are gonna like lead to a great uprising, you know, uphealing, you know, revolution basically. And that's my destiny for sure. So when I tell all my friends, when I tell my friends with locks, I'm like, my friends tell me a trait. People look at me so weird now because I have my locks. I'm like, they're looking at you weird before you had your locks. The locks give you the power to see, you know. Now you can just see how much they hate you, you know. You can see how much it is like you. Like, really, to me, my locks are like my babies. I will never cut my, I will like cut them to maintain a certain length, but I'm never gonna cut my hair for the comfort of others. You know, it's just. And I also had a really traumatic experience when I was a kid. My mom took me to the barber shop once, and I didn't know why I was there, and she cut all my hair off, and like, it was just, I was crying for weeks because I didn't know why, like my hair was gone. You know, so I love hair. I love my own hair, and I think it makes us strong. You know, makes us like plants, you know, it's like our leaves on top.
Our hair is our antennas. This is how we receive information, the frequencies, the vibrations. You know, meditating is one way, but this is how you do it without even having to think about it. This is when you feel bad vibes and auras. These are
What? You remember that name? What is?
So because we live in a racist, white supremacist culture, um, it's unfortunate that many of our symbols are connected to the reality. And I wanted to read from page 59. Okay. As stated previously, the dominant aspect of the total environmental reality on this planet is that the overwhelming majority of people are black, brown, red, and yellow. This fact has created the most fundamental collective preoccupation and perhaps fear in the global white collective. White genetic survival, a survival that is threatened by the genetic material contained in the genitals of black and other non-white men. Non-white, hold on, let's open the door for Mary, sorry. My bad, no one's at the door, just hearing stuff. Okay. This fact has created the most fundamental collective preoccupation and perhaps fear in the global white collective. White genetic survival, a survival that is threatened by the genetic material contained in the genitals of black and other non-white men. Non-white people are genetically dominant to whites, and thus are potential genetic annihilators of the majority of the white collective. Due to this fear of white genetic annihilation, the global white collective has evolved during the last 2,000 years. The global white supremacy system and culture that dominates all black, brown, red, and yellow peoples in the world, determining their behavior in all areas of people activity. So this is just something to like have in your thought processes, like why our symbols look the way they are. Most symbols do exist to sustain racism, white supremacy. They do exist to keep us complacent in this in this system, so we are not aggressive dismantlers. It allows us to be comfortable when we go out and play some sports. Allows us to be comfortable when we're out to go get. Sorry, it allows us to be comfortable when we go out and get a white girlfriend and show her around town. You know, all of these are symbols, and I didn't even bring that up when I was talking about symbols, but to me, interracial dating and interracial relationships in the context of white supremacy are all symbolic. I'm ready to move on to the next chapter unless people have stuff they want to chime in about, ask questions about. All right, so before we do move on to the next chapter, just want to finish by reading something that I really enjoyed. I think I just read it though.
Wow. So yeah, hold on. I just posted in the chat a picture that's a really in the beginning of the book she mentions this video that the picture is from, like a prayer of Madonna. And just to like one last emphasis on the importance of symbols and how these so-called celebrities reinforce and refine white supremacy. So you can check out that picture.
I'm gonna share my screen really fast so people can see it who is on their phone. You guys get a moment to look at it. It's Madonna in front of 3 burning crosses. And this is a real music video that she did called Like a Prayer. To me, it's very racist. I saw the music video. The whole video is about Christianity. We should actually watch that to get us like jump started into chapter 6.
Yeah, can we talk about how problematic Madonna has been like since forever? But you know, like it just became much more apparent now that she's like old and still like trying to hold on to like, you know, people paying attention to her.
I mean,
like
the only negative thing not negative, the only thing I know about her is that she did the Like a Prayer video, and she has a clothing brand that is basically removing all aspects of gender for children and causing a lot of confusion and gender roles. And a lot of people are done with gender roles, but I think they still have like important aspects to them. I don't think you just throw gender in the trash. I don't think that's something that should happen. But Joe, I'm super down to listen to what you have to say about Nana. I would love to be more informed about the enemy. Yeah. Joe, are you still there?
Are we about to get into chapter 5?
Yeah, I wanted to see if Joe wanted to share what he was talking about.
Well, I want to read the intro to chapter 5 because I think it's super important.
Yeah, I was just picking up a delivery. Yeah, it's just I think Madonna has done a lot of really, really, really problematic things for me, like recently. I do not like the way like that she sort of interacts with her Black kids, like on Instagram and stuff, right? Like it's just it's just really sketchy to me. Like it's very much like, oh no, I have a Black child. How can I be racist, or how can this be awkward or something? Like there was this one like moment where like the kid was like dancing or something, and it just felt real coony. Like, so I'm just, you know what I'm saying? Like, I feel like when I saw that, I realized that since day one, there's been a lot of ways that she fetishizes like Black folks. There's a lot of ways that she, in considering herself as someone who's always pushing the envelope, absolutely just like goes too far in some ways that are just kind of like celebrated, but are just like deeply disturbing. When I was able to like sort of put things together. I can give credit where credit's due. She's made some really impressive art. Absolutely. Like she got bops. but she got limits. Like there's some, you know what I'm saying? Like it's just, I can't, you know, like that's where I'm at with it. Oh, see, there you go. And it's in the chat. Yeah, she copies a lot.
All right, so let's segue to Swa. You wanted to get us introduced by reading the introduction. And also, like, first of all, this chapter is called Chapter 5, The Symbolism of Christ, the Cross, the Crucifix, the Communion, and Christian Holidays. Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, I'm so excited.
Okay, dedication. This essay is dedicated to all of the Black men who are in greater confinement, which are prisons and jails, with the hope that they will be encouraged never to give up the struggle against white supremacy domination. Once they understand what the struggle is truly about, they would never return to jail, and their behavior will no longer be anti-racist, blind reaction to stress from ignorance, anger, and fear, but effectively counter-racist. Many of these Black men and their letters to me have given me great encouragement, support, and help towards continuing our fight for justice. All Black people are still in confinement. So I'm sure, well, I don't know, I should speak for everyone, but I have family members who have been in greater confinement from longer than they've been in regular confinement, which is a large experience for a lot of our Black comrades in this genocide. So yeah, I just wanted to share that and read that.
Yeah, before we jump into it, does anyone have any thoughts about the chapter? Any questions about the chapter? Anything you want to talk about before? Or not before, but just like we don't have to jump right into it. I would love to hear people's own understanding. Voice as well.
I have a question for everyone. I would like to ask who here identifies as a Christian or a Catholic or any of that? Do we have any who identify with these religions? No? Okay.
I was groomed and programmed by my family and those around me to be Christian. And so I have a lot of understanding and familiarization with the role of Christianity and how the rules basically of this religion. And to me as a kid, I had a hard time believing a lot of things that I read, especially the aspect of hell. Like I remember going to church as a child and being told if I was bad, I would go to hell. And to me, that just didn't make any sense. And also, it didn't make sense to go to hell forever because I wasn't bad forever. So why should the punishment be forever? A lot of illogical things that were being told to me. And also fearing, like why would you fear your creator? It sounds pretty dumb, honestly. Sounds pretty silly, you know, if you ask me. Well, actually, here's a question for you guys. What are your experiences with institutionalized religions? You know?
Well, like you, I want to call it my African survival unit, you know, better known as family. I was forced to be Christian, and my Sunday school teacher, he was just like just a huge like walking contradiction. Like he was like teaching kids like about the Christ, but he would make really like inappropriate like jokes and stuff, you know, like, you know, really cruel humor. And it was just like, you know, it was just like the hypocrisy that is supposed to manifest under the system of white supremacy. So. That's my tad bit. No one else has any experiences.
Well, let me just throw this in. I've been doing some research. I'm actually doing some writing around this very powerful topic. You know, the only way for white supremacy to have gained the stronghold that it has is by not only dethroning the queens. If you look through the Bible, you'll see the book of Kings. So my question to the Christians and the Bible thumpers is, what happened to the book of Queens? So, you know, the last Pharaoh of Egypt was a woman, Cleopatra, and they had a myriad of queens throughout the dynasties. And the only way for them to even get white male supremacy up and running was to first not only dethrone, they tried that in Egypt and Africa, but there was respect for the gender roles. They knew and they practiced them. And the woman was always held in slightly, not a great deal, but the queen was always held in slightly higher esteem than the king. If you look at the headdresses, the ancient Egyptian headdresses, the queen's headdress always sat slightly higher than the king's, right? So they had to not only, like I said, yeah, I see that. They not only had to dethrone the queen, and as a side note, if you look real close at the colossal statues of the pharaohs, you will see that they had locks. They're detailed if you look close at the photos, right? So not only did they have to dethrone the queen, they had to enslave her. And so that's why the Pope can't have a woman. Now just imagine the person, the woman that brings forth life. It's a sin to sleep with the woman. You came out of a woman, and it's a sin for you to sleep with the woman. So you know, me and Christianity, I can go on, I can lecture about Christianity, but that is actually the origin of white supremacy, white male supremacy, by enslaving the woman.
Yeah, earlier Joe mentioned how like the mythology is so important in this white supremacy, and if you look back on like all of like European like mythos and logos, it's all like, you know, anti-women's, always like the man having to like, you know, survive, and the men are like, you know, have multiple lovers, and like their men are often fornicating with each other, and bestiality often plays a huge role in their mythos for some reason, you know. The sirens, you know, the whole siren situation, those things are not human, but you know, they're like, you know, telling tales of like, you know, having sex with them, and their folktale and whatnot. That's just one example that I just came up with. So. Ben, you're muted.
I just said the whole Christian religion is founded upon homosexuality, and you can see it throughout the entire culture, throughout the entire ages of Christianity, even in the Black church. You have an extreme amount of homosexuality going on in the Black church, because I think that religion promotes it and cultivates homosexuality.
Hey, Ben, I need you to say more about that.
Well,
Can,
hey,
can you,
Mary, wait
can you
for the chat.
explain that thought? Can you explain that thought for me a little bit more?
Okay. For the reason of power and maintaining power. If, say, for example, during that time, the Roman generals weren't even allowed to have wives either. They considered the women, to have a relationship with a woman, you are actually acquiescing to her wishes at the end of the day. So in order to completely suppress and oppress her power, you can't have them at all. You can't have a woman at all. They had way too much influence over a man's decision making. So to avoid any influence from that woman, you had to eliminate any relationship with her at all. And all she was there for was to serve you as a slave. They were the slaves. They were the Europeans' first slaves, were the women and children. So in order for them to maintain that, they realized by everything they learned was obviously from ancient Egypt, from Kemet. And they learned from them that if we're gonna, and also, I think it's a human nature thing. I think there's a distinction between the nature of the European, like we discussed last time, the dog-eat-dog savagery of coming up in an area where there's little vegetation, it's very cold, and they have to eat animals and meat. Whereas you're dealing with the people from a climate where there's plenty of vegetation.
Yeah, they're saying there's a theory that the caveman theory made the women as it was more like a hindrance for them, the women and the children, because of the lifestyle that they were living. Women and children were seen as, to them in their eyes, as a burden.
Well put.
I think the whole survival of the fittest that whole like idea can be traced back to the prehistoric time of the Neanderthals and the whites living up in those icy Europe.
Yeah, the Iceman, the caveman.
Yeah, where like it was survival of the fittest. The whole like bodies like evolved to survive in like those harsh conditions. This is why Black people have like wide noses, because we need more air to go into our noses to cool our brains down because the heat in Africa. Whereas in Europe, it was so cold over there, they didn't need wide noses anymore. So they evolved to have like like noses that go down and small holes, so to prevent the cold air from going into their brain. And also they have like there's a lot of stuff that happened that I learned yesterday via Hidden Colors 2. Just recommended that. Mary and Trey is a great documentary. But yeah, it's just so deep, this just this race thing, man. This thing that is, yikes.
And I just want to remind everybody, throughout this group, we will be learning a lot of things that will make us uncomfortable and like definitely will force us to really process things that we thought were our own decisions and that was natural to us. For example, what was it? I just the way I used to like rationalize every single decision I made, and I would try to be control of everything in my life. That's not possible, actually. It's a very mechanical way of thinking, and it's also very, very destructive to like your mental health, your spiritual health, and I just this is one of those books. It's like Pandora's box. It's like, oh wow, yikes, and like for example, I didn't know like Christianity symbolism was so horrid until reading this book. I knew Christianity was garbage because I was a Christian, and I knew that it wasn't helping anyone around me. And another thing about Christianity is that I would be in church and I would be like, wow, all these people in my neighborhood are getting shot and robbed every single day. Because I grew up in South Central LA. And God was not there to save them. Jesus ain't never stopped a bullet, ain't never stopped someone from smoking crack, ain't never stopped someone from selling crack. So to me, like, it was just a facade. It was like, wow, God, this guy y'all worshiping is not the same God I'm worshiping. You know, because I'm not worshiping him no more. The fact that it's a him too is kind of weird. Like all of the, like, this UFO scary man in the sky is gonna kill you if you're not like him. You know.
Yeah. I want to comment on what Ben said. I think like I've never heard like that origin of Christianity broke it down that far like that before, but I think the logic definitely checks out. I think like the logic definitely checks out if you're contextualizing that within the system of white supremacy. So that's what I want to say.
You know, our Sunday school teacher definitely was not. Definitely existed on the spectrum for sure as well. What was it gonna? Mary, since you're like here, you want to just do a quick check-in?
Yes, hi everybody. I hope everyone's well. I've just made it home from work, and it was quite a buzz. It was great energy. I was dealing with the people painting and celebrating their birthdays and encouraging that. So I'm not tired, but I'm tired physically, but I'm not tired. So mentally, I'm very much here. So happy to be here and yes, speak my part on because I know everybody's here has talked about chapter 4 already, haven't you guys?
Mm-hmm.
Yep. There's no sound really in back, but I just wanted to like my 2 cents on chapter 4, and I really enjoyed reading chapter 4. It was very healthy for my brain. It's something that I already recognized, and I hadn't watched Hidden Colors. I understood that symbolism is something that's deeply ingrained to us, which is why media, adverts, TVs flash as much as they can in a day just to get you thinking about certain products. It's why billboards work to a certain extent, or you'll smell something and remind you of a symbol that you last saw. But then I never thought about it in the context of how it's literally used to degrade our own thinking about ourselves and continue this superiority complex that European society has us living under.
We're losing you. We lost your audio.
Literally, we are all literally mentally ill. How about now? Hello? Yep.
That's
You're better. You're better, Ash.
Perfect. Okay. Yeah. Turn off my video. Okay. Is that better?
Yes, we can hear you fine now.
That's
Yes.
better.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm just going to read what she had mentioned. She said, counter-racist psychiatry defines mental health as patterns of logic, thoughts, speech, action, emotional response, and perception consciously practiced by the victims of white supremacy, meaning that we practice this ourselves with the objective of eradicating racism at a global level. Maybe I didn't read that as I should have. This is, okay, Okay, that's not the particular part that I'm talking about, but she basically stated that we are all mentally ill until we actually realize that we are victims of the white supremacy.
Oh, I know what part you're talking about, Barry. Yeah,
When
go
we're
ahead.
dealing with like sleeping or like not awakened to the world. Sorry?
She was
Okay.
just affirming what you said.
Never mind.
That's it.
Sorry, it's because bear with me. Yeah, so yeah. The point I'm trying to make is the fact that most people who are not aware of like white supremacy, well, I myself, I understand that I'm unlearning a lot, and it's gonna take a while for my mental health to really align and adjust. It's going to take real practice, but it's helped me understand that when I'm talking to people on a regular basis, I cannot be too upset in a sense, because everybody is literally working from a state of like a deprived mental health based on the forced conditioning that we've had, which is, yeah, why I appreciate that chapter so much.
Yeah, I love her definition of Black mental health. I think it's really important that Black people do not compare their mental capacities or mental health to white people ever, because that's just has historically led to just the continuing of our destruction and our collective like erosion.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. I actually, it was good to hear you bring up that the Black mental health bit, because it's something that I forgot to mention when I was doing my covering of chapter 4. So yeah, and Celia, did you have something you wanted to say?
Oh, I was just because Mary had read the wrong part, but I was just telling Mary that I knew exactly what part she was talking about. It's around in that area. I think it was on page 53, because I have wrote down the same thing what Mary was saying about the mentally ill. Basically, if you're participating in this symbolism, you're basically submitting to, and you are mentally ill. And she also said self-negating, I think was the word.
Yes, self negating, and also there's Dr. Kaban. He said he calls it subtle suicide, which is also like basically the same thing as self negating. Like doing anything that like is eventually going to lead to your death. You know, alcohol consumption, cigarette smoke, just all the toxins that the white people have made to give us comfort or give us to satisfy our sweet tooth. All those things are
How about Lil Wayne? How about
forms
Lil,
of suicide. What was that?
how about Lil Wayne?
Oh well, yeah. Lil Wayne is like in a perpetual state of being like reacting to racism, and also self negating, subtle suiciding. I'm if his songs are accurate, but
What I found interesting though, now that Mary's brought it up, when she was saying us participating, like that really like rang in my ears when I was reading that. And I think our last session, Trey had brought it up too. He was like, "Yeah, this is the system that we're living in," but this chapter really honed in on like the symbolism and what are we participating in? How are we participating in this by consuming these things? Some of it we can't help because it's literally all around us, and then some of this other stuff we are literally participating in it. And she's bringing that up, like you're choosing to participate in some of these things, and that is a mental illness. And but then she also gives us a definition of someone who isn't mentally ill, Black people who aren't mentally ill, and she calls them the group respecting or the supporting. And I felt that was very powerful too.
Thanks, Celia, for sharing. Thank you, Mary and Swab. Um, did you guys notice the forward before she begins the actual essay? She kind of gives us like a blurb about how this is not intended to be sacrilegious or offensive to anyone. That's something I've been trying to do when I'm having like online arguments or just talking to people about these things. I try to be very, very nice. But I'm learning that I'm not gonna do anymore. I'm not gonna really talk about these things with people anymore unless I know it's gonna be constructive. Like arguing with like obese white people on Facebook is not healthy. I was doing that this morning, and I had to ask myself, what am I doing? Like, why am I doing this?
You do not argue with the trolls. You don't do that.
Yeah. So here, for context, a Black woman that on my friend list have posted is Black privilege real? Like, is it a real thing? And I just wanted to see who commented, and then a white woman had commented saying that, yeah, it is real, blah blah blah. And I was like, very interesting. That you would say such a thing when you live inside white skin. So, but yeah, do you guys
saying that? What do you think of Charlemagne's book, The Black Privilege? Has anybody here familiar with that? What he says in that?
I've never heard. I didn't know he had a book like that, and I wouldn't read something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, Charlemagne is I don't want to name call, but Charlemagne is not constructive at all, at all. And that's not name calling. That's just.
Do you guys if you?
No, I don't believe in black privilege or black male privilege.
I haven't read the book at all, but the only way that I would like to die on sign.
Is he claiming that we are privileged, or there's some Black privilege in this book by Charlemagne the something?
Honestly, I can't really comment on the book concept at all. I just thought, wow, Black privilege. I haven't read it. The only thing that my brain really pulled together was our natural privileges of not dying from sunshine, but yeah, that's about it.
I don't think that's a privilege. I think that's nature. I think that's just nature and the laws of the universe have destined that to be. That's not a privilege.
That's true. It isn't. Not with all these other layers that we have to deal with.
Oh man.
Yeah, but one thing that I loved about
Mary, you're saying?
Yeah, thanks. Sorry, the one thing that I loved about chapter 4, it just lets me know full-heartedly why it is that the media needs to be controlled by the Western world. Why they made sure the image of Jesus Christ is white in every single church. Why missionaries went around and were able to do what they did, because they understood the power of symbolism and the effects that it will have on your mind. It's just, yeah.
Yeah, for those of you who may not know, like white people like went around and systematically like made every church, every like Christ figure white and churches, and also they systematically lightened the paintings on the pyramids and inside the temples and stuff. They systematically lightened those Egyptian scans to erase Black people out of Kemet, the place in North Africa known as Egypt. So yeah, religion captured the mind, and then you can do it. It just the having a god be an oppressive force and then having control of that oppressive force, I think that's a good way to describe what white people have done from this religion. And we've seen it used to just dominate our people since its introduction to us. And I'll always hear some kind of we can reclaim it, or like take stuff from it, but I think I'm sure we can't take things for it, but I think the large majority of it should be thrown away. Just our religion collectively should become destroying race and white supremacy. Our religion should become counter racism, counter white supremacy. That's what I believe. And I could be wrong though.
I agree. Religion is something you practice, and our religion should be making this planet more safer for the future of Black people and the future of all melanated people. And as the whites would say, it should be safer for all the Black, brown, red, and yellow people. Because keep in mind, we did not classify ourselves as this color, and nor did the Native Americans classify themselves as red, and nor did the Asiatic people classify themselves as yellow. This is all done by white people, by white men. I think his name was Cornelius Linnaeus, some shit like that. But he is the guy that classified the races. But yeah, let's get into it. Let's get into the symbol. So the first symbol we're gonna talk about is the cross. Oh my, I was not prepared. Had no idea actually that it represented what it represents. And it makes sense to me because white people fear being genetically annihilated, right? And they have a lot of fears around the Black male genitalia. And the cross is basically a castrated penis. And it makes so much sense when you understand racism and white supremacy, how this symbol has become so powerful. And now whenever I'm outside and I see someone with a cross tattooed on them, I'm like, you have no idea what's going on. Please chime in. I know this was a lot for everyone. So please, like...
I feel exactly the same way. Today at work, at Sip and Stroke, there was so many like amazing pieces of art, and there was like two Black women sitting side by side, and they had like a picture of a sunset. And the word of the day was freedom. Believe it or not, the theme was freedom. And the woman had like a beautiful rainbow and a massive cross overlaying the rainbow. And the other one was a beautiful sunset with a cross in the distance. And I was just like, you guys have no idea. And these were strong looking Black women. They look older than me. And I just thought, I'm not going to ruin their day. Like, I'm not going to ruin their little paint session at this point. But then I also came to understand that this is like, a lot of people don't understand the when you're calling God him constantly, you are worshiping this symbol, you have a lot of energy around males, and most times it's not a positive one. Like, have you heard the terminology of people saying that they're the brides of Jesus? Like, I feel like it all ties in. There's this obsession with the phallus, but not a healthy relationship with one. And I feel like the cross kind of pertains to that a lot. Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing, man.
Yeah, and prior to Christianity, this cross was used in other religions to represent the phallic symbol. So what the whites did is that they just took that meaning of it already and added stuff to it. So now it means like the castration, white survival, but they added like the sad, pale Christ figure on top of the cross. You know, because this is an abstract symbol, it can mean a lot of things, because that's the power of symbol. It can mean so much. So they have this figure, this image of like a pale, weak, white guy dying on a cross, and they use that as like a symbol to rally all of the people who they were going to classify as white, because prior to like this really organized religion, white people were like really like not like unified. They were like doing a whole bunch of like barbaric stuff to each other. They were like self-destroying each other. They were destroying each other. And until they had this organized religion and this organized like plan of white survival through genociding other people, that's when they became like this collective, and they really used this religion, this Christianity to accomplish that. And yeah, if we want white supremacy, and we have to get all our brothers and sisters free of this beast of Christianity. And if you disagree, if you disagree, I would love to hear why.
Yeah, please, Joel, Ben, and Salil, please share your thoughts on the cross prior to reading this chapter and post reading this chapter.
Okay, I'll go. Prior to reading this, my understanding of the cross was a burden. We all have a cross to bear. And to acknowledge and understand, it could be, I don't know, in a marriage, you know, you're in a relationship and, you know, it's a good relationship, but there's something about either person that is tough for you to deal with. But you have to, that's something that you might have to deal with. So that's the cross. You know, it's like the sacrifice you make. The cross symbolizes the sacrifice. After reading this and other things, I'm blown away by the depth of the symbolism of the cross, the phallic symbol, and how Salil pointed out, which is interesting, it's the opposite of the Ankh, which symbolizes eternal life. Was one of the symbols, you know, the coming forth of life and eternal life. And this is something that I've been working on myself too, is that in the Catholic Church, they do the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost, the three, the Trinity, right? But
no feminine energy inside.
Huh?
I said no feminine energy inside.
Well, see, that's where I was going. Everything in those writings, in those symbols, have meaning, have profound meaning, and they never attach the meaning to the largest part of the cross, which is the part that goes down. That's the longest. And where does it stick? Where does it sit? It sticks into the Mother Earth. So the bottom part of that cross symbolizes the mother. What happened to the mother? So it's taking out the female energy in that, and that's very interesting how the writer took it, and like she used the example of The Exorcist, how in The Exorcist that she took the cross and, you know, mutilated herself with the cross, and how that's where the actual that's where life springs forth from. I could go on. I could go on.
I would love to contextualize some of what you said, because when we look at religion, when we look at like people who classified are melanated people or non-white people, when they like think about their religion, they be like they use it to like justify their suffering, and they like use it to justify like bad things happen to them, or they use it to justify like you know, persevering, whether they're seeking to create justice, you know, or some sort of thing. And white people just use it to control or dominate. They don't actually believe their religion. And I want to like emphasize what religion does to like the non-white mind, because the author of Yurugu, Dr. Marambi Ani, she was doing a lecture, and she mentioned how she was in Africa in a bookstore, and there was a whole bunch of Christian books, and she asked the black woman, "Why you're a Christian?" And it took a long time for the black woman to understand that like, this is a valid question. You know, like this is a important question that you shouldn't feel insecure about answering or whatnot. So then she asked her, and then she said, I am that of a dirty rag, and I've accepted Jesus Christ into my life to help me. So that was just like a small example of what this so-called religion was doing to her mind. And this is in Africa, the motherland. So like they're trying to become European. Yeah. So religion is very deadly, especially to the mind. So I just wanted to share that.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing as well, and Ben, Celia, and Joel. You guys have any thoughts you guys want to share, or your own interpretations of the cross post and pre the ISIS papers by Dr. Frances Cress Welsing?
Yeah, sure. Post, I never really had a relationship with any sorts of religion. I was fortunately blessed that my parents didn't really push religion on me, which was strange because my dad is a Muslim, well, was a Muslim. He isn't a Muslim anymore, and my mom is still currently Christian. But they didn't really push religion on us. But when I was growing up, I don't know, I just never really that wasn't something that really gravitated towards me. It wasn't really pushed upon me, so I never really gave it much thought or paid much attention to it. And anything that I really knew about Christianity, I it just didn't resonate with me. And because it never resonated with me, I never explored it. So people would ask me like, like just bring up certain stuff, because a lot of Black people know Bible scriptures and I don't know Bible scriptures, so they think that that's weird that I don't know any or can't recall any Bible scriptures. I don't know that stuff. That's not knowledge that I have. But what I do have and what I do know is just through life experience and what I've absorbed and observed through the universe. And so post, I've always felt like religion was something that was another jail, another prison, another something to just keep somebody in control. I've always felt like that about religion. Why? I don't know. But maybe because I had two different religions with two different kind of viewpoints that were totally, to me, opposite of one another. If you think about Muslims and Christianity, because Muslims and that female figure is very, very, very sketchy in Islamic traditions, and then with Christianity, it's more the way they hide the feminine figures, kind of more discreet, versus if you compare it to Islam. But overall, I just feel like I didn't have a relationship post, but pre reading this, to me, it was like, that makes sense. Like, thank you. That makes total complete sense. I needed this information. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. That's how I read this and was like, because now it helps me to understand what I'm dealing with. And once I understand what I'm dealing with, I know how I need to prepare myself.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I appreciate for sharing that. I think I've come to understand in life that there is a difference between religion and spirituality. And religion in many ways is, it can be a conduit to spirituality, but it can also be weaponized, right? So in looking at the symbology of the cross, which is not something that I grew up with either, I think I always understood it as sort of like phallic, right? And the times when I've been exposed to like Catholicism, right? Like the theatricality of it, right? And the way that folks sort of suspend logic for a lot of what they're doing, especially in comparing, say, Catholicism to more African diaspora religions, like maybe Santeria or what have you, or ways that we've kind of mashed things up. There's still like common theme around it, right? And it comes back to what is kind of privileged as normal and acceptable, and what is considered stigmatized. And that still comes back to that paradigm between, you know, white supremacy and Black folks being considered as like the unwashed masses. So I think that's really, you know, important to point out. Also, I'm very cautious to stand in judgment of folks that are operating from a place of hegemony. I think we can, if we're in a system, right, that only presents us with bad choices, I, in good conscience, cannot indict the person that is choosing between one of those bad choices, even if they're doing that with all of the wisdom, all of the shrewdness, all of the knowledge that they have access to. For me, based on my belief system, I have to greet that with compassion. And in greeting that with compassion, then maybe offer a different lens for analysis, to offer maybe different ways of looking at things, because I don't want to in any way trivialize the agency that folks have. And I think that's one of the really deeply insidious things about like how white supremacy, specifically within the context of religion, has weaponized that faith and belief, you know, in different missionary missions, etc. Right? Like that is unspeakably cruel. And I think that's something that plays out like all the time. But ultimately, to me, it's I don't want to paint someone who's being victimized by a really just by a really, I would consider it evil interpretation of what other folks consider liberatory, right? I think their liberatory like theology, that's something that literally got the civil rights movement up and going, right? So I think there's power in that. I think there's power in folks saying what I was presented as a container for spirituality was not enough. I've decided to create something better out of that. But for me, it's an evolution of that system, right? I think that's what liberatory theology sort of did within the Christian context. So I don't think I can make just one indictment on that. I think it's important to speak to kind of specific manifestations of it. Right? Like I think we just need to give each other a little bit more grace and nuance, because it is that complicated. It is that complicated. And there are many ways where even throughout history, when Black folks were sort of pushed into a corner by someone trying to say, this is the way you should think because you're less than, we figured out different ways, even if it is within that same container. And the last thing that I'll add is we're also speaking about patriarchy, which is directly connected to all Abrahamic faiths, right? Jewish, Christian, Muslim, etc. Right? There's a through line with that. And so I think that is something that has to be interrogated, not so much just looking at folks who unfortunately have gotten used to being in that bear trap because everything around them has presented them with these really horrible options. And they, from a place of really, really good intention, have been ensnared by them for a number of different reasons, all of which were well-intentioned, right? I think we really just have to greet it like a little bit more carefully, and in a way that upholds like the humanity of folks that are still, can be in many ways operating in a hegemonic system.
Thank you so much. So on page 64, I want to read this.
Just before you do that, I'd like to chime in on my thoughts before and after.
Sorry, Mary.
Yeah, so for me, before the cross, I kind of had that, before the reading this chapter, I had that in my mind of understanding that, because I grew up Muslim, and understanding Christianity and walking into Christianity was something that I did as an adult. So I came with my eyes extremely wide open and very like comparative, and then I came to understand that there's no one religion to get to the Most High. You can use any guidance system on this soul plane to basically understand your relationship with God. That's because that's what it is. It's an individual relationship. But one thing that I never took to and I understood was not an issue, but like a practice that I didn't necessarily believe that we should have been doing, was the communion of the ingesting of the wine and then eating the bread. And I just, symbolism wise, ritualistic wise, there was nothing that anybody could try to explain to me that would make me think that this is something I need to be doing, because that's what it looked like to me. It just looked like drinking blood and then eating the body. And I just understood. I was like, I'm not doing this. It's not for me. So now reading the chapter and reading it full force and understanding that this is like a desensitization in embracing cannibalism. It's a glorification of cannibalism, and Dr. Frances Cress Welsing having it in this book, detailed in this way. It's just, no one can argue with me at this point. I don't like what Joelle was saying is extremely true, and it is very necessary that you have to give people their own agency and respect that and have nuances. But when it comes to certain practices that, you can be a Christian or interpret Christianity in your own way, which is why there's like 30 different denominations, because that's happened throughout. Everybody has their own forms of practices, but the communion in particular, I think, is something that needs to be like stopped altogether or embraced and understood that this is a practice of cannibalism and it's not a righteous way to practice your religion. And this has been fed its way in through here. Yeah, so having it written in full form like this was beautiful for me. And I also wanted to add, I learned today that the word ethnic means unholy heathen.
Wow.
What? I need some more context, but can you imagine the word ethnic, where we all have to describe ourselves, who, if you are a person of color, means unholy heathen, which reminds me that we need to really take language and etymology. It's super important, because we are spelling things into our lives and labeling ourselves things that them is messing us up. Yeah, that's
and this religion is too, because even with how you say you don't like communion, if something like that is so etched in, because that's a big part of Christianity, that is a big part of the religion, that is a big part of being Catholic. So for something to be that monumental, and you break down the meanings or potential meanings of what the symbolism can mean, what else are they lying to you about? You know, so it can't be trusted. It just can't be trusted on any levels. I don't care what you try to make it out and cut it up and, well, I'm just going to take the parts of the religion that I like and make it my own. Scratch that. If you are melanated and you are Black, you need to get back to your roots. You need to get back to your ancestors. And all of this religion came from Kemet, came from Egypt, came from the pyramids. This is where they got this information from in order to twist it up and make all these subpar religions that are now they're using as tools and weapons against you. So you can't just be like, oh, I'm just gonna go to church on Sundays, but I'm not gonna take communion. I'm just gonna sing these songs. I don't know what they mean. And come on, no. And this is what she was saying. It's the ones that go undetected. The symbolism that are so persuasive, that it's so undetectable, that you need somebody to kind of like a psychiatrist. This is their job to let you know this is mentally ill. This is not correct. Somebody has to tell us, and we have to be open enough to believe that this could be a possibility. The universe is infinite, so can't nobody tell me that anything is not possible. everything in this universe is possible. That is a possibility. And I'm not going to ignore it because of the history, because of what is being done, because of when I look around my environment and what I see.
I have a question for Joel. Is it not nuanced deconstructing this religion for our brothers and sisters, understanding what this religion means, and then relaying that information to our brothers and sisters? I feel like that's giving it nuance, and if they're unwilling to receive the information, then there's no more grace that can be given. We can't force a person. We have to consider those people just people who will not serve their mission in this life or the purpose of ending racial and supremacy. I would consider those people already dead, honestly, if people are unwilling to wake up. Not even wake up. I hate using the word wake up. Understand that they're being genocided and not want to fight.
Just to add to that, in the same chapter, she mentions that a dead nigger is a good nigger, something that is a rhetoric of white supremacy.
Yeah. And just quickly to piggyback off of what Mary said, there are just because like I'm a language person and I'm into that, right? Like I really do feel like it's true. Like all of these societal ills and et cetera, it all shows up in the language, right? And so I'm even thinking of like, there's a phrase, there are so many different phrases that are like related just to death, right? Just to be disparaging, right? And specifically, I'm thinking of like, there's just an ethnic group that's indigenous and they're on the coast of like Venezuela and Colombia, and they're called Maracuchos, right? But they're still highly stigmatized. Some of them like visually would ID as Black if they were here. And I only know this because it was an old professor. But there's still a very derisive phrase that people say, like that a good maracucho is a dead maracucho, right? Same thing, right? So I think one thing that I am profoundly just fascinated by, and something that I want to do in my life's work, is to like demystify the power of the mundane. The things that we take for granted have so much more power than the things that we think, call our attention. And so I think that's really powerful. But to get back to what Swa was asking, their awareness in and of itself does not directly connect to action, right? There's a decision point when one becomes aware. And in that decision point, it is possible, and it happens all the time, where people become aware and they're like, well, I'm choosing that the decision that I'm going to make is to ignore it. Because as I'm doing the mental math, I feel like if I make a decision that is in line with this new information, I will have to change. I will have to give up a lot of what makes me feel safe and secure in this life. And that's too high a price. It's part of, the set of decisions that we all have access to as humans. And also it's, we see that play out all the time with, say, white folks that gaslight us during conversations, right? So coming up against that decision point of awareness, and you, right, as the Black person in the conversation, like really, even sometimes surgically precise, breaking down exactly why whatever the hell they just said 2 sentences ago was absolutely mortifying on racial lines and was absolutely racist. And then the response you get is, wow, well, thank you. And nothing happens, right? The thank you is considered like a gift, just that they acknowledged that they were wrong and just that they left their ears open long enough to hear your explanation after they were gaslighting you. But it becomes gaslighting because, of course, at the decision point, the decision that they make is to ignore it and not repair the harm or what have you. I think it's important to speak to that. That's an agency piece, right? Culture, society, etc. Just the way we through history have done it has always involved some measure of spirituality. It has. That's literally part of the human experience since day one.
Even
And
science,
yourself,
even science, when you get to science, you can't, when you get into science, you get to a certain point where it's like you have to bring in spirituality because nothing else can explain it.
Mm-hmm.
yeah, absolutely. And we're also saying science as this like as our modern interpretation of science, but we also have like
can we make an effort to be as concise as possible, please? We need to stick on track with the book and to be concise. That's what I'm saying. Be more concise, please, everybody. Joe, can you unmute yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. So for me, it just comes back to a place of agency. There is, you know, all Black folks, like all skin folk aren't kinfolk, right? There's not everyone that we're going to want to be in community with or are going to want to be in community with us. And for me, that's what it just comes back down to. Awareness is amazing, but if that awareness does not turn into action, when I was bringing awareness because of something that harms me, I don't want to be in community. And for me, that's the end all be all with kind of the conversations about sort of religion and how it's weaponized.
So, both of you guys, everyone's making very valid statements. So last year I learned about how in China they are methodically, strategically finding Christians and putting them in jail, killing practicing Christians. And now that I have this book, it's very easy for me to simplify. They're just killing white supremacy. They're killing it quite literally. And Christianity is now illegal in China. I don't have enough information to know why it's illegal, but just something to be aware of, and feel free to do more research if it catches your interest. But they are killing the idea of Christianity in China.
Because what I am aware of right now is that Chinese people are killing Muslims as well. So maybe they're done with Christianity and now they're moving on, trying to eradicate.
It's a hydra, right? Sorry, Mary, I didn't mean to cut you off. Continue, please.
No, I was just thinking maybe they're cutting off anything that doesn't encourage Chinese nationalism or Chinese culture.
I agree.
But what are Chinese people? Are they Hindus? Because most of them, they symbolize this sort of goddess symbol, this idol that has a big belly, I think. Sorry.
Buddha.
What are they? Buddha, that's it. So they're Buddhism.
I don't think we can answer that question because everyone's a different religion.
Yeah.
You must have lots of religions, and apparently there's more Chinese Muslims than there are Arabic Muslims based on population. So there you go.
Yeah.
China is predominantly Buddhist.
Okay, thanks, Ben. So on page, let's get regrounded in our wonderful ancestor, Dr.Frances Cress Welsing. On page 64, and this is everyone in this group has spoke on this, so this is gonna uplift and validate through her writing, everything that people have said, Ben, myself, Joel, Mary, Swa, Celia, and Isola. So I submit that the cross as an important and provocative symbol in the white supremacy system / culture is none other than a brain computer distillate of the white collective's fear-induced obsession with the genitalias of all non-white men, Black men in particular, who have the potential to genetically annihilate the white race. Furthermore, the cross represents the black male's genitalia removed from the black male's body, meaning castrated genitals. Thus, the cross is a critical symbol in the thought processes of the white supremacy system, beginning in its evolution almost 2,000 years ago, during early white aggression against blacks in Africa and Asia. This particular interpretation of the cross has never been given before. So basically, yeah, she's just saying that, well, I don't have to say what she's saying, but I agree with this statement that this is a system that, a symbol that is used to oppress and control. And I want to go back to something that Swa said, how Black people use Christianity to kind of coddle their suffering. Like they suffer in prayer, but to me it's the same thing as suffering in silence. For example, I know a person who has been homeless for quite some time now, and whenever I talk to them about their situation, they'll say, I'm waiting for Jesus to help me, or Jesus is going to help me eventually. Jesus is going to give them a house eventually. And it's not true. It's not realistic. And it definitely makes people complacent in their suffering, and also it kind of like capacitates them. I hope I'm saying the word correctly. Capacitate, incapacitates them. It just leaves people hopeless. Well, I'm sorry. It gives people false hope. To me, hope is not an actionable word. It's not a verb. Hope is just this abstract thing that we have in our minds. Reading is actionable because when you read, you learn, and when you learn, you either have, like what Joel said, you have to make a choice. And if you are, if you care about your soul and you care about planet Earth, you should be making decisions to shed the European programming, the white supremacist programming. If you choose otherwise, when the system is dismantled, you may be thrown in the trash as well. And that's like, to me, logical, because we need to really replace the system with justice, and we're gonna have to have people who believe in justice. And when I say justice, I mean a society where everyone receives help, and those who receive the most help receive the most help. Everyone gets help. That's it. Because once the system is dismantled, a lot of people are gonna need therapy and counseling, and like the whole world's gonna be different, and people are gonna need a lot of help. And the help should be free, and the help should not be a burden to those who need it, nor should be a burden to those who are giving it. But yeah, I really love that definition of not some definition, but I really love what I just read about her submitting the cross as an important provocative system and maintaining and refining racism and white supremacy. Is there anything from the book that people want to regurgitate and bring into the forefront of our dialogue right now?
Yeah, I want to read this from page 66 and contextualize it. After Black men were lynched and castrated, they were often burned, thereby reinforcing the interpretation that the cross symbolically is tied to the Black man's genitalia, and that the burning cross is the burning Black male in his genitalia. When the Black male genitalia with the dominant Black genes are burned, cut off, or otherwise destroyed, white genetic survival is assured. So at the end of this Christian religion that our fellow victims of white supremacy, fellow prisoners of war are participating in is their literal own genocide. And I think that's the important thing to understand, and maybe even emphasize, if we find ourselves in a position where we're allowed to talk about white supremacy, because we shouldn't even be seeking out religious people to talk to this about, because that's not going to solve the problem. We have to be guided some way, shape, or form to the information. But yeah, I think it's really important to understand that like this Christianity, this cross signifies Black death, and Black death equals white survival.
Also, Ben, you brought up the Exorcist bit. I want to read that part and also give some more context to that. All right. If my interpretation of the cross is correct, that in the white male psyche, it represents the Black male genitalia in the context of the global white supremacy system, then it is possible to understand the portrayal of the white female in the popular book and film, The Exorcist. Here, the female used the cross to masturbate herself when she was possessed by the devil, i.e., the Black monster. This symbolic portrayal emerged during a time period in which increasing numbers of white females were selecting Black males as mates. Or, more correctly stated, white females began sexually aggressing against socially powerless Black males to gain possession of the Black phallus. So this is really deep for a number of reasons, because one, she's talking about mass media culture, which is a major tool in sustaining racism and supremacy. When I say mass media culture, I'm talking about books, television, film, music, poetry, philosophy, all the things in the arts that are, that we consume visually and through audio. So whenever you see a film or watch a TV show or a film, just know that even if it's not clear or obvious, the bad person or the entity that is causing harm to the main character is supposed to be a Black person or represents Blackness itself. So this is a really amazing book called Color Monitors, but it goes into detail a lot about that. Whenever you're watching like the Terminator, for example, even though it's a white man, he has an exoskeleton. He portrays like Blackness, Black people, destroying whiteness, getting rid of whiteness. And whenever you see technology in film, whenever technology goes bad, that is white. That is Black people. That is a Blackness. So, for example, the show Black Mirror, that whole show is about technology turning on white people. Like, technology is supposed to serve white people, supposed to serve all people, supposedly. So it goes all the way back to antebellum slavery, when the first technology was Black bodies. That was the first technology that white people actually, quote unquote, I can't say created because they didn't create Black people, but they definitely used Black people as technology. And during when slavery ended, white people perceived that as Black people turning on them. So whenever you see technology, whenever you see a monster in film, it's supposed to be a Black person. And I'm so glad that she mentioned that this white woman being possessed by the devil represented symbolically the Black man, a Black man, I hope I made sense when I was talking about that.
Yeah, I just tossed a picture into the chat, and if we're talking about iconography, this is my critique of Cresswelling's context, right? Because I feel like her historical context didn't go far back enough, right? Because there is actually writing, there is literature and there's discussion that shows how even back to like horror films at the beginning of film being a thing, they created these images that demonized Black people, usually using the zombie trope, right? So also demonizing, Black male figures, and in a sideways way trying to delegitimize, right, religion coming out of Haiti. But they also, it continues on to this day, right? Even on the cover of Vogue, right? Because once the message of the symbol is set, then you can invoke that message time and time again, by just showing maybe even the shadow of that symbol, right? And folks have been calling this out because like even this Vogue cover happened like probably, I don't know, like maybe 10 years ago now or something, right? But it's important to put them side to side so we see exactly what's going on, because it was Black folks and folks that, you know, are understand the evils of white supremacy that called attention to this, even so that it could be a discussion.
Who is this white lady? I don't know her.
It doesn't. I don't know her name.
She's actually she's a sports commentator. Yeah, she's a sports commentator on I want to say like ESPN or something. But what they were was LeBron James as King Kong and her as the white damsel in distress.
Yeah.
Can I say something?
Of course. Yeah.
I wanted to know, what are your views on the movie Get Out? Because I believe that there's a lot of films that have subliminal messages, and you see, like in America, like a lot of Black people do, like they go missing due to the fact that, according to my understanding, like a lot of white people do tend to use Black people's organs in order to, obviously, for their own health and for their own benefits. So obviously watching Get Out, it just kind of traumatized me, and I was just like, wow.
Yeah. Before I answer,
what are your perspective on
before I answer, I mean, before anyone answers, let me just read this part because it kind of ties in to a little bit about Get Out and what people are going to say. So on page 65. So to me, what I'm about to read is all about how symbols lead to projection, and then projection leads to actual action, and then action leads to Black people dying, going missing. So the use of the cross as a symbolic object in the white female in the white female masturbation also occurred when large numbers of white females were actively fantasizing about being raped by Black males and were establishing organizations, societies to prevent it. This was their reaction to their own unconscious desires. The white females' preoccupation with writing books on being raped also occurred during this time period. And the white supremacy culture, the historic symbol, the rape of white females is the Black male. The white female, until recently, has been held back in her sexual desires of the Black male by white male. Since white female liberation has been granted to white women in small measure, the white female finds herself unable to own desires and aggressions in check. Still, she is unable to admit these and aggressions consciously. So, back to your question, Isola. I love Get Out. It's one of my favorite films. I love it for a number of reasons because of how honest it tries to be. But I do believe that, in short, Get Out is a film that symbolizes white people wanting to be Black people because they perceive Black people as having superior genetics. And it is a film that want and that need being fulfilled through science, which is like, I want to say through white science, because a lot of people don't understand or know that without Black women, we wouldn't have gynecology like at all. Black women were the first people to be tested with the tools that they use for gynecology, and these were women who were quote unquote captives, women during slavery. And they received these surgical procedures without any anesthetic, without any medicine. So every single white should be
Sorry to
thinking
cut
about
you.
working. Let's try to
So
let people finish before we talk over them.
yeah.
A lot of white women should be thanking black women for having like vaginas that work properly and that are sustained, because it wouldn't be possible without black women who were tortured and mutilated for the sake of science. But yeah, please chime in. Yeah.
Sorry, my connection is so poor. So like when you pause, I kind of think that you've finished speaking. Sorry. And yeah, the reason why they did that is because they believe that black women they're not susceptible to pain. They believe that black women don't feel pain. So I feel like, yeah, I just wanted to piggyback off what you were saying in regards to, yeah, they basically used us as guinea pigs. Yeah, because I believe that we don't go through pain kind of thing. But yeah.
Do anyone else want to share their thoughts? Or should we move on? She proposed a question. I answered. Feel free to answer.
Yeah, just to add to what you've said so far, not only a black woman being tested and used up to now, in the UK, so over 50% of black women's wombs are taken out in hysterectomies, and I, from first-hand experience, have communicated with some of these women who didn't need to get hysterectomies. So that just lets me know that this testing is still going on today at a very high rate. And people you have to really take care and know your body, because white science still will deceive and lie to you so that they can get the end product, which is a black womb, to continue their genetic testing and advancement of themselves and race. And what you are saying in terms of Get Out traumatizing you, yes, on that, it can definitely it definitely is traumatizing for a lot of us watching it, on the level of the fact that we are being human trafficking is extremely high, and black organs, of course, due to health, due to vitality, due to robustness, we're number one in the market, in a sense. If healthy lungs or not, they'll probably think that the genetic what's the word, when something can regenerate itself, in a sense, our bone marrows are highly important in society as well. So yeah, protection of young kin is for not just for the reason of rapists going this, is literally for genetic survival.
Yeah. So when I contextualize Get Out, it's a direct like representation and projection, and it's about cannibalism. It's about the consuming of black people and black energy. The last book the book club read was called The Delectable Negro, which is about how, like, throughout slavery, black people were literally being cooked in like ovens and like over billow fires, and like just really just being ate by their slave masters, and by and not only being cannibalized in that way, but like through their forced labor and through rape and through various other ways of torture. Those are all forms of cannibalism, spiritual cannibalism, so on and so forth. So Get Out, we see like that their bodies are literally being taken over by white people. So that's like it's a real like interesting movie. But I don't think it was that deep. I don't think it was it could have been much more like constructive when addressing white supremacy. But it does a good job of showing us that the white woman, is equally bad, is equally a perpetrator of white supremacy, because often they go under the radar. I think it's very important to understand that white supremacy is maintained by women and male collectively, not just the males. So I think that it's constructive on that part. Understanding that Jordan Peele is with a white woman, I'm able to understand his movies more as well. So
yeah, and I just want to toss in the fact that eugenics, right, is part of this conversation. And also there's something that's happening here in the US where they are subjecting women that are being imprisoned by ICE, which is the Customs and Border, it's basically Customs and Border Protection, where they place people under custody if they say that they have an iffy migratory status. They're subjecting Black and brown women to hysterectomies that are unfounded by science. And it was a Black nurse. It was a Black nurse that literally, she's really putting her life on the line by being a whistleblower, and she's been on the news because she directly interacted with these folks, and she was like, this doesn't make any sense. There's no medical reason for it. But this is one of the ways that like white supremacy weaponizes medicine. And especially in this case, right, it would be an example of misogynoir. But that's, that's a form of genocide, really. So it's so important to just speak to that. It's still going on. It's still going on.
Thanks so much, Joe, for sharing that. So I'm going to continue with this passage unless anyone else wanted to provide information to Isila about Get Out. Ben, I'm actually curious to hear your thoughts if you have seen Get Out.
Also, I could add that and the prison industrial complex, there's this Life for a Life program that they have where they allow prisoners who are about to get executed to donate their organs and in exchange for prolonged life in death row, which is just another manifestation of how our bodies are used after we die and given to white people, as in Delectable Negro, where our bodies are being ate, consumed, sold to medical labs to be experimented on, sold to hospitals, sold to schools. So it's just something to think about.
I'll just chime in just briefly on, in order for a person to feel that strongly about you as a Black person, it requires love. I know that's kind of paradoxical, but
no, I get totally what you're saying, because I know the origin of white people. So yeah. Yeah.
They have, in order for anyone to hate you so vehemently, they have to have loved you. They love it. Just picture this. Just imagine. The reason why I got this, where this came from, is just imagine 250 years, you have these women that belong to you. You own them. You own their bodies. They have to do anything you say. And Emancipation Proclamation hits and they're gone. All of a sudden, they just abandoned. And these women oftentimes would suckle these babies and raise them more so than their own mothers. They had very strong bonds and ties with these white kids, these Black so-called mammies. And she mentioned calling white caretakers nannies and Black caretakers mammies. And these so-called mammies were more of a parent to these white kids than their own parents. So when they left, when they abandoned them, it's almost likened to that of a relationship where you're madly in love with someone and they just leave you. You want to kill them. You're highly, highly indignant about that. And so because they're so completely dependent, I mean, love is not even a strong enough word. It's like total extreme love and dependence on something that you can't have. And you will never have it. You can never be that. You can never have it. All you can do is imagine and fantasize about it. And so since I can't have it, I want to destroy it.
It could be. I think it's a fear
What I
thing.
wanted to say. You had something you wanted to say?
I think it's a fear thing. I don't know. I don't think fear. I think it's mostly fear. It could be love, but I think it's fear.
Doesn't that have some form of connection with the first chapter where they talked about and understanding where white people come from, the fact that they are like our genetic offspring. They would have that love-hate relationship, because it's almost like you abandoned us and now look what's come of us. Like, is it our response like that? It ties into that.
I agree. Yeah, I agree. So on page 66, so we've been talking about how the cross, the symbol, has allowed. Oh, we lost Salil. What happened? Is she coming back?
No, she had said that she had to go and she'll be with us in movie night. She did put it in chat.
Okay, sorry, I didn't read it. So we talking about how this cross has allowed white supremacists to basically rule the entire world, but not most of it, all of it, because a lot of it is under its control. And I think this quote is so important because Constantine the First, the Great, the Roman Emperor ruled 306 to 337 AD. He built Constantinople and made Christian worship lawful in the beginnings of the white supremacy system. Had the following words placed on the cross: "In hoc signo vinces," meaning, in this sign you will conquer. Indeed, by controlling the black, non-white male genital, which the cross symbolizes, whites have conquered blacks and the entire non-white world majority. Currently, the majority membership of the Christian churches is non-white and are all held and controlled under the sign of the cross. The authority is maintained by whites under white supremacy, white purity, and white survival. More recently, the fury of the white supremacy dynamic was expressed in the form of Nazism. The dominant symbol used by the group in the white supremacy system was and is the black swastika. The central element of the swastika is the cross. A spinning or rolling cross, the cross in motion, gives a visual illusion of the swastika. Hitler and the Nazi movement's central theme was white racial genetic purity and the elimination of all persons classified as non-whites, i.e. Semites and Gypsies, who were viewed as having black genetic heritage from Africa and who were considered genetically dominant to the Aryans, whites. The symbol of the swastika, the cross in motion, spurred the whites on to destroy those who were classified as genetically dominant to non-whites. So even in the rhetoric that they use when worshiping the cross, they say they message to each other, hey, in this cross, you will conquer. And that's what they basically did. And a lot of people don't talk about how when Constantine was getting Christianity, he was getting it to be like mandated by the law. There was what was it? What is it called? I forgot what it's called, but there was a long war where people are being killed in the pursuit of Christianity. Well, a lot of those people were black people. They were Africans. These black people were being slaughtered, and then they make all these movies about it, and you see these white people being killed in the name of the Christ. And history, yes, I'm gonna stop there actually, because I don't really know what it's called. I forgot. It's escaping me. But there was a time during like the beginning of this whole Constantinople and Constantine. I forgot what it's called. So I'm not gonna like talk about things I'm not really having enough information
The
on.
Crusades?
Definitely, it's the Crusades. A lot of people don't know that the Crusades were basically just an advanced, brutal slang of so lots and lots of Black people. So every movie you see about the Crusades, and I know there's a ton. My mom loves them. I don't know any of the names, but at the moment, but I know there's one that stars Orlando Bloom. What's the name of that movie? Does anyone know?
Is it Kingdom of Heaven?
Yes, The Kingdom of Heaven. In that movie, you see these people like fighting each other and dying for Christianity, but other people, there's not a Black person in the movie at all. But Black people were the main people getting killed in the name of the cross. So yeah, interesting stuff. And also within Christianity, there are so many poems and songs that like regurgitate the knowledge that to be white is to be pure and to be Black is to be a heathen, to be of color is to be a heathen. And there's this song that she references, and the chorus goes, "Oh, precious is the flow that makes me white as snow. No other font I know, nothing but the blood of Jesus." Scary stuff, honestly. And there's also a battle one. So when white people saw first of all, Jesus was not white, he was a Black person. And he was basically whitewashed in this new reiteration of the Bible. And what they did was they took a Black man with woolen hair and replaced him with a white, frail, skinny, blonde hair, blue-eyed person, and they put him on the cross. And what this did was it evoked so much emotion and energy within the white collective that they knew, like consciously or subconsciously, what they needed to do. And what they needed to do was lead wars, conquer, colonize, take over, control. And there's this really interesting poem that she puts in the book, and it's called "Onward, Christian Soldier." And I want to read some of it. "Onward, Christian soldier, marching as to war, with the cross of Jesus going on before. Christ, our loyal master, leads against the foe. Forward into battle, see his banners glow." Chorus: "Onward, Christian soldier, marching as to war, with the cross of Jesus going on before." First of all, the foe is anyone who's not white, by the way. The foe is the Black person, the melanated person. But there's so much to break down. I would love some more people to chime in, talk about parts of the book that you enjoyed, recycle the information. That is the point of these discussions, is to make sure we are understanding, learning.
Yeah, so I think the first thing that stands out to me is just the way that she's theorizing like Nazis using the swastika. That seems like a personal theory of hers, but it just doesn't seem like one that's connected to history. There's been a lot of documentation that the inspiration with that is connected to Aryan mythology, because the swastika symbol itself comes from Hinduism, but they turned it on its side as sort of a perversion of that, because you can still see the proper symbol in its original context in a lot of places where Hinduism is like the dominant religion, especially like in iconography in India. So that's one thing that stuck out to me. But aside from that, just the invention of whiteness, right? The invention of whiteness and using that to superimpose that on history has been a constant thing. You know, we know now that all of these different statues, right, that are, say, part of the Renaissance or what have you, they're marble, right? But none of them were ever white. They were all painted. The paint chipped off. Folks that are in classics have revived that conversation to show what the reality of it was, because Europeanness didn't exactly exist as a cohesive thing back when these statues were being made, and whiteness as an ideology hadn't exactly been created in the way that we know it now. These were a lot, especially around the Mediterranean, you know, North Africa, Middle East, what have you. It was still extremely diverse, even going all the way up to Hadrian's Wall in England as well, right? But the mythology necessary to create white supremacy has to create whiteness, right? It has to repurpose reality in a way that will somehow make it seem as though it's legitimate.
Upsetting their emotions, you could be that level of control is something that needs to be debunked highly, and this symbolism really helps in understanding that. And yeah, breaking down like the white as snow, black male, all these negative connotations in the English language for black, and all these positive positive affirmations for whiteness, or just a little white lie. Just all of these things need to, it's happening, constantly using the terminology white supremacy, not constantly, but more adding it into my vernacular in my everyday speech is really helping, in a sense. At first it was really hard to adjust that mentality and start using that term white supremacy, but it's adding more to the violence now, because I just guess I wasn't used to hearing anything white and it feeling violent, but my experience is adding to it. My experiences is fueling that on a very wide scale, and I see the word white supremacy being sounding as violent as it actually is soon, very soon.
Yeah, so a lot of people who like have who don't want to use white supremacy because they feel like it gives like whiteness like a supreme position, and so some people use white dominators, which is like the same, you know, thing. And I want to contextualize this part of the book because we haven't mentioned like food yet, and like how that plays out to the symbolism. Well, we did mention communion, but this is on page 77, and it goes, in an article entitled "The Sweet Taste of Sin," Morin Boros quotes food critic Gail Green. "I have always thought a good chocolate mousse is cake. Afro. Oh, my bad. I want to start over. I have always thought a good chocolate mousse is an aphrodisiac. The more intense the taste of chocolate, the more erotic the spell." He continues, "Some chocolate mousse lovers go even further. It's not a food, it's a concept," says one indulgent male. "It's like illicit sex. It's so good but fattening. It gives you pimples. It's a sin." I'm just gonna skip a little. "A dark brown food namely chocolate, causes such orgasm like ecstasy and is associated with eroticism when orally ingested." So I just wanted to read that and then mention like one of the like greatest individual manifestations of not the greatest, one of the most vile evidence of white supremacy which is Jeffrey Dahmer, which is a white male who effeminized black and non-white people. He worked in a chocolate factory. He um, he just checks all the list of what white supremacy does, and the end result is to kill, is destruction. So whenever people mention like cannibalism, or that like non-white people are the savages and they're the cannibals, just name drop Jeffrey Dahmer, who was like the biggest, manifestation of white supremacy. And now they're making a show about this man. Ryan Murphy's making a show. Netflix is doing a show about this, which is just like a huge indicator of the obsession. And he's basically one of their heroes because he's like he got to do what a lot of them fantasize about doing, probably. And yeah, and what he wanted to do, he was trying to make like zombie slaves that he could just fulfill all his like desires with. That's what he was trying to do. But just the whole fact that they're making a show about him, the glorifying this, reminds me of the book Trey's reading, of how like white, like the characters they present us with are their true nature, are their character. This is them. This is what they believe in. This is what they like, and this is, I don't know. I can't justify any other reason of producing a show based off Jeffrey Dahmer. There's already so much content surrounding this man, and now they're doing a whole new show. So, anyone want to comment on that? Feel free.
Yeah. I actually was just talking to a friend about that last night, and I'm really upset that they're doing that, because it just it's mortifying, right? It's really 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 mortifying. The vast majority of his victims were black men, and it's deeply deeply insidious, especially given the fact that folks like him are still very much around, right? Ed Buck was someone in LA who just as recent as last year was taken into custody after the second black gay man ended up dead at his house because he has a reputation for luring vulnerable black queer men, mostly that like to use meth, and drugging them for his like sadistic and sexual pleasure. So it just, I'm just really really pissed that Ryan Murphy is doing that anyway. And I think Janet Mock is attached to it, which I really deeply dislike because I'm a huge fan of what Janet Mock does so far. And I think that she, as a black trans woman, is just probably going to be used as some sort of a smokescreen for what is really just making the profit off of trying to humanize yet another like white murderer, which is an ongoing trend. And I don't see any good coming from it. And I think it's easily re-traumatizing to any of us that are in any way connected to the men that he victimized. He doesn't deserve this platform, and I'm deeply pissed off at Ryan Murphy. And I mean, it's not good. It's not good.
I understand Ryan Murphy. His collective work, as I've learned about white supremacy, is just a whole maintenance of white supremacy. It's all violent, it's all grotesque, and it's all made in such like a I don't know. It's just like, I don't want to spend so much time talking about the entertainment area of people activity, but it's really important. Everything he says is very important, and I want to add that the victims of like Dahmer's relatives are probably, some of them are like alive and well, and they're seeing this this white supremacist murderer being celebrated, and then it's gonna have like I'm sure they're gonna have merchandise tied to this, and it's gonna be well received, I'm sure. But I wanted to say that this is why like the whole celebrity, all these people are just made to reinforce and refine white supremacy. There's nothing that's gonna be put in our face most of the time that would be constructive. That's why I've like grown to not care about any celebrity or their work unless I see it to be of constructive value. And just because I could decode it and understand it as wow, this is racist. That's not being constructive. That's me making the activity constructive of consuming it. What's constructive was me like watching a movie that's actually like the stupid step by the door. That's a very constructive movie to watch. The Battle of Algiers, very constructive content to watch. But to consume stuff like um what's that shit called? The American Horror Story. Ryan Murphy's work, Tim Burton's work. They are refined and maintain white supremacy, full of like white, just full of negative symbolism. And yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy. All right, I have to log off, but thank you.
Thanks for hanging with us. Really appreciate it.
All right, see you next week.
It's just gonna be the next 2 chapters, Joe, for next week.
Okay, got it.
Mm-hmm. Appreciate the energy. Appreciate the energy.
By Tracy.
Fine.
And we are waiting for we're waiting for the internet connection and for our mobile devices to charge so we're able to jump back online.
Oh man.
Did I miss anyone? Did you already cover death of Jesus offering eternal life for the albino?
Oh no.
Did I miss that?
Oh yeah. We talked about that a little bit earlier, but you could you want to share your thoughts on it?
Just that in Christianity, or even they have it. Even they have it twisted. So the truly spiritually connected people understand that God is always present, never absent. You don't have to call on God, kumbaya, that crap, come by here. We're always 100% connected 100% of the time. And it's just a matter of us being consciously aware of being connected to all intelligence, all beauty, all creativity, everything that is in existence. And by being consciously aware of our connection with eternity and infinity, you can look up in the sky and see the stars and the ocean and nature, and be connected with your creator that way. And so the closer you are connected to nature, right, and the actual foundation and the core of nature is the black soil, the black earth, the black carbon atom. And so the scientists and I would contend that they knew about that. And they knew that the only way to obtain eternal life, and better yet, the darker your hue is, the darker your complexion is, the closer you are to eternity, to eternal life. The blackness of space. Right? That's it's up to us to realize and become consciously aware that we are actually, if God is the sun, we're a sun being. If God is the ocean, we're a wave in the ocean. We're actually one with this this power, this eternal source of life. And it's so profound that, you know, when I read that, it just gave me chills, you know, because I think that is the concern with everybody, you know, especially white folk, is their fear of death. You know, the fear of death. And so, you know, in order to, I just love that. I happen to believe that they knew that, and they actually distorted the symbol of, you know, God, Jesus sacrificing himself for everyone else to have eternal life through forgiveness. So you mean you're going to enslave me? You're going to torture me? You're going to rape rape everybody, the men and women and children and everybody, all this torture, and then hand me a book to say that the only way that you can be happy, the only way that you can have life is if you forgive me. Right? Through forgiveness. So and I understand that forgiveness is for me. I forgive you for my own peace, for my own peace of mind, for my own peace and serenity, right? But that's a deeper level of spiritual understanding. On the surface, I'm forgiving you, and in fact, and in reality, I'm actually giving you the okay of the abuse by forgiving you. You know, you start, okay, that's okay, I forgive you. So that's actually giving the perpetrator the go ahead to continue their behavior. People don't look at that forgiveness as on a deeper spiritual level for themselves. Not in mass, not the vast majority of people. Psychologically, when you forgive, you gave them a pass. And that's the same, that's this, forgiveness, asking for forgiveness is not a word. I'm sorry doesn't mean nothing, doesn't mean anything. It's your actions that determine your apology, not the words. And so, wow, when I read that, that different idea that and you mentioned that there wasn't just Jesus, it was a whole string of Black folks up there getting crucified. I never heard that one. That was profound. And by eliminating Black people, you're giving yourself the opportunity for white folks to live on forever. I'm buzzing from that. I'm buzzing from that. Wow.
Yeah, it's that deep. It's really like that. At the end of the day, Christianity is Black death, the spilling of Black blood for the continuation of white survival, for white genetic survival.
Definitely true. I was thinking about if there's one more symbol we need to talk about before we can adjourn, and that is the Christmas tree or Christmas tree. And I'm just gonna go ahead and read from the book. Likewise, it's on page 67 stars on page 75. Likewise, the symbolism and the major holidays of the Christian religion is supportive of my interpretations. At Christmas, the tree is one of the most important symbols. The Christmas tree is, in its abstracted form, a cross, the symbol of the Black male genital. First, the Christmas tree is chopped down in the forest, then it is taken in the home. In the U.S., when the Christmas tree is decorated, colored balls are hung on the tree. When the Christmas tree is taken down, Sorry, when the tree is taken down and burned, the boughs are the first taken off. Then all can dream of a white Christmas and a surviving white Christ. This is just further reiterating what you and Vaswa and Ben has said. Similarly, in Europe, small white wax candles were placed on the Christmas tree. And the Catholic religion, the Christmas tree is said to represent the tree of the cross, while the wax candles are thought to represent the body of Christ. Thus again, we have the symbol of the white, weak, melting Christ hung on the symbol of the black male genitalia. At the Easter holiday in the U.S., it is traditional to have colored eggs, colored jelly beans, and a chocolate rabbit and eggs in an Easter basket. These colored items are Eden, the white albino bunny that sits amongst the colored eggs, as though he laid them. Generally, is not Eden. By ingesting the colored items, the sin of being without color is symbolically removed. Being born again whole has been achieved through symbols. And this goes back to like every religion underneath the white supremacist system and culture has these little symbolic projections. And I'm just going to go ahead and continue reading because I want to just cover everything that I have noted to cover with y'all. Other important holidays in the white supremacy culture further reveal the intricate workings of this symbolism. On both St. Valentine's Day and Mother's Day, the white male gives gifts of chocolate candy with nuts. In the first instance, he gives it to his sweetheart, and in the second, to his mother. If his sweetheart ingests chocolate with nuts, the white male can fantasize that he is genetically equal to the black male. And if his mother had ingested chocolate with nuts, he would not have to worry about white genetic annihilation, as he would have been colored and then could be an annihilator of white genes like the feared and envied black male. Both the Valentine's shape and chocolate candy have a symbolic meaning not previously recognized, examined, nor understood by Western culture investigators. However, once the unified field of the Western cultural dynamic, behavior dynamic is set forth, it will be seen that these fragments of symbolism take on a brilliant clarity. So how are y'all feeling about adjourning? If you guys are ready to adjourn, there's one more thing I need to read. But I feel like we've covered a lot. Please let me know if there's anything else you want to share before I read this last quote.
I just wanted to comment on what you saw, but in reading the last quote, is it encapsulated in with Saint Valentine, the sharing of the chocolates, the Easter eggs? Is it still relating to that? Because it might tie in.
Yep. It's but it's still related to all that.
Okay, so when you after you read, I'll come.
All right. This is something I wanted to join with. I think it's really important. Thank you to everyone who's still in the call, by the way. As long as the Black non-white collective consciously and / or unconsciously accepts a powerful and dynamic symbolism of Black male castration, they never will be self-group respecting and forever will remain mentally ill. Mentally ill persons who do not respect themselves and have self-group negating patterns of logic, thought, speech, action, emotional response, and perceptions never can liberate themselves from their oppressors. Black psychiatrists have the responsibility of clarifying for Black people all aspects of the oppressive dynamic of white genetic survival. This includes exposing and decoding all of that power system's major symbolism.
That's a very powerful statement you just read. Very powerful. Highly necessary to share as well. The question that from what the chapters that you've read, from the extracts that you've read so far, the question that comes to my mind is, of course, we're gonna have to create certain practices and count racist cultural games that we can play, like hiding of the Easter eggs and stuff. Like, my question is, we, it's not. I wouldn't say it's too late to form a new religion, but my question is, how do we unify and collectively start creating creating new traditions that debunk what we're hearing? Because it's enough to sharing this information for people is beautiful, but this is something that somebody had mentioned about the power of the church as the community that it builds around it as well, and people leaning on that community for as a source of food, as a source of activities, a source of communion, time, place, spending of time. And my question is, in what ways can we basically pull together and create these kind of practical games that debunk these ideologies?
Can I just make a comment right quick? In order for us to even begin to get into the solution, instead of continuing to practice this conditioning of capitalism, in other words, what my predominant thought process being, what am I getting out of the deal and what's being done to me? We cannot approach this as victims, first of all, even though we're victims, but we cannot internalize the victim mentality. Woe is me, look what you did to me. So part of the fight back, part of the pushback is, what are my skills, talents, and abilities? What do I have? What are the gifts that I have? And what talents and skills do I have? And how will I share that? How do I empower my brothers and sisters with my skills, talents, and abilities? And what am I doing to the collective society, starting with myself? Not so much what's being done to me. Yeah, I'm concerned about what's being done to me. Hell yeah, I care about what I get. But what's more important is what I give and what I do to others. And I had something else, but that's all I could think of right
now. For me, mine will be very short. It takes a lot of knowledge building first, like building like-minded individuals to build that community with. So for me, it just takes time and patience and a lot of learning and a lot of enhancing one's perception, enhancing one's emotional capacity to help others and guide others on a similar journey. It's not like it's not really something that happens quickly, but it happens certainly.
Yeah, I think it's really important for those people who are like stuck in religion, like this countering race to white supremacy has to become the new religion, and they have to like, you have to, if you want to like go about this, want to reach out to the religious blacks, you know, tell them in a way, show them in a way to channel all their Christian energy into the denouncing it and coming up with a countering racist white supremacy religion, you know, codified behavior, like all the codified behavior and the code book is by choice. You know, you don't have to practice all of it. But a religion, you would have to practice all of it. So a codified religion, if you want to go that route, I just think everyone needs to be on a collective mission to countering white supremacy, and that's my religion. That's what I'm doing. That's my beliefs. That's what I believe in practicing.
Just one last thing. I'm sorry, go ahead. Just one last thing I heard said that until we as a disenfranchised people come together and establish our own, which may mean ultimately, I don't know what would make more sense, establishing it here on the American continent, which is a captured land, a conquered land, a colonized land, or until we collectively come together and establish our own laws, we govern ourselves, we our own country, our own something, whether it be going, uniting with one of the African countries and saying, okay, this is going to be where we come together and have our own, totally separate and apart. Like, I'm a Malcolm X person. We need our own everything. They won't respect us until we establish our own country. All the African countries are still colonized. They're living under neocolonialism. Until we come together in Africa and take control of manufacturing our own resources, with all the resources are there. The cobalt, the plutonium and uranium, the gold, the rubber, everything that civilization needs to thrive and continue is on the motherland. So that's what the ultimate, for us to reconnect and repatriate. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that will happen when we all go back to our Africanness, reconnect to our Africanness, and redevelop our African consciousness. Because right now we're all stuck in with the wanting to be white programming. We're programming to be white, even if we think we have a lot of black people who I would say this to will say, I know I'm black, I got black culture, we got hip hop, we got dancing, we got we got good hairstyles and all that stuff. I'm like, okay, but how is that as black culture protecting the race from extermination, genocide, racism, white supremacy? So we need to develop a culture, which is a culture that protects our race and ensures our race, but we need black power for that. And in order to do that, what Ben says, we would need to get in control of our own resources, which are in Africa. And I think if we develop critical mass, global critical mass, it shouldn't be hard to rally our African comrades to, take over, get their resources back. There's more of them than the white supremacists. And if they start bombing our African brothers and sisters, then over here we have to start, defending them. So that's what that's a solutionary,
I agree with everything Swan said.
I agree with everything that's been said so far, actually.
Same with Ben as well.
And what Trey was saying about getting knowledge and information, unfortunately, the main source of knowledge and information for our young people are movies. And that's why I'm glad you're a filmmaker. And I have 5. I have 5 movies inside of me right now. And they're all overthrowing white folks. They're all, I don't want, I gave you an excerpt of one of them, but yeah.
Yeah, you never sent me the writing of one of it though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I got that.
I tell you, making films, everybody working with their own talents and gifts, with the mindset of countering white supremacy is our way out. And yeah, just also look directly into the Easter Bunny games, the practicing of these traditions of I just thought to myself, okay, so where's our monopoly? Where's our monopoly board that teaches us African centered thought? Where's our card games that teaches that? Where's our trivia that will help incite this? This is because at the end of the day, like we said, it's hard for people to read. And if we understand that there's other ways that people can take in information or can get them books, then creating these or having avenues.
Man, your mic's like cracking. Oh yeah.
Oh,
All of it was choppy, so you should repeat all of it. TBH.
yeah, I was just talking about as we was all stating that our people
I'll call
don't
you right back.
our people don't like to read too tough. So like the way that these white supremacist practices were ingrained into us, like going and collecting these eggs, all these little things that we did to take it in. I thought, why don't we beat them at their own game and create African? So like, where's our monopoly board? Where's our card games? Where's our trivia? African-centered thought trivia card games that we can distribute amongst ourselves that will get people thinking about where did this knowledge come from, and then going back to the books, and then us all developing this unified thinking through adding to the culture in that way, because we understand that reading is so secondary to us at this point.
Yeah, that's a great idea. I actually will like start. I want to start like devising, like black board games about like ending white supremacy. Like you win by coming up by like getting your piece to like the end white supremacy piece. I don't know, but that's a great and card games and like if we're gonna like have like game nights and whatnot, why not be thinking about why would not be reinforcing any white supremacy? And creating this economics and that ways. So
And I've experienced creating games and board games. I created a board game for Forever 21 that's still used till today to get people acquainted with all the departments and roles at the job. So we can literally sit down and do this. It doesn't have to be abstract thought. But yeah, I agree that because even that game Cards Against Humanity is literally like another manifestation of white supremacy and how all the jokes are like not all the jokes, but a lot of the jokes can be geared towards the demeaning and attack and abuse of black people, like putting black underneath like the death things. And I haven't played that game in a long time, but I know it's super racist and like primarily for black people.
Yeah. And we can literally do it like Cards Against White Supremacy. We can literally do our own version of that. We could like just how they like niggerize all of our culture and all of our creations and turn it against us. Bam, do the same thing.
Right back at you. The African center.
Can you imagine how much? Oh, sorry.
No, I was gonna say with the completion of Urugu, we're all set.
Oh yeah, well we need the code book. We need like to codify ourselves because a lot of us are not codified. A lot of us are be caught with our uncodified behavior and thought processes.
Yeah. Sorry, what was you saying?
Yeah, and I do believe we may have members who are stuck in tragic arrangements, which is like not okay. It's like so it's a lot of stuff. We're still learning and we're like maintaining under the system. So.
And one of the big starts for this would be to cancel Christmas, cancel Thanksgiving, cancel Halloween, cancel Valentine's. We could actually, if not like put a dent, we might be able to really make a super strong statement to this society. If Black people collectively stop celebrating their holiday, they don't have anything to do with us.
There are horror days. All holidays are horror days, and we should not like celebrate any of them. Actually, the most deadly time of the year for Black people is from October 31st to January 1st. That's when most Black life is lost. So yeah, Ben, you're totally right. We should have stopped fucking celebrating holidays, horror days, a long time ago. But our people are so lost in the programming. And
Kwanzaa, we can do Kwanzaa. That's the one we can do.
But I'm not interested in celebrating anything until white supremacy is over.
And one thing that I also observed, especially with these holidays, they're done around the time where astronomically or like metaphysically in the air, it's high spiritual energy. It's all done on these days for a reason. So not just not participating in that, but replacing it with something that we do privately, because energetically still speak. Like at All Hallows Eve, there's a reason people do rituals on that day. There's a reason why they want everybody to walk around in witches' costumes. There's something more spiritual happening on that day, and actually understanding the information and then reversing it and countering it to counter white supremacy is our best bet. Because at the end of the day, metaphysics is always going to be there, and we should just use it to our advantage.